Welcome back, guys, and today's video of 20 terrifying stories of the creepiest encounters that ever happened on Halloween. And for a better experience, I suggest dimming the lights, getting comfortable, and let's dive into the darkness. I just finished fixing up my late uncle's old house. This odd, lopsided place tucked deep in a hollow outside Maple Ridge. I think the nearest neighbor lived maybe 2 miles up the ridge, but you wouldn't know it unless you were squinting for chimney smoke. The house wasn't much when I first got there, but I liked having a project. Halloween that year landed on a Thursday. I only remember because it was the first one I ever spent completely by myself. No plans, no trick-or-treaters way out here, no decorations. Just me, the fire, and a leftover pumpkin ale I found in the back of the fridge. I figured I'd relax, maybe watch something dumb on my laptop before bed. Sometime around 9, I heard a knock. Or I thought I did. Just one, sharp and distant, not at the front door. It came from the back wall, right around where the bedroom sits. I paused, listened. It didn't come again. Then I let out this half laugh, half sigh. Told myself it was nothing. Old wood shifts in old houses. Wind hits just right and makes a beam pop. All normal. Still, I got up, just to be sure. Back door was locked. I jiggled it, looked out the small window. All I saw was the slope behind the house, littered with wet leaves and tall weeds. I opened the door. Why? I have no idea. Habit, maybe. Nobody there. Went back in, cracked open another beer, and tried to shake that stupid itch in my gut. Told myself again it was nothing. Probably a squirrel jumping off the roof, maybe a branch. Then the second knock came. 3 of them this time, spaced out, almost like whoever it was didn't want to seem rude. They came from the front door. I froze, waited, stared at the door like it might knock again if I looked hard enough. Nothing. I looked through the peephole. Empty porch. Gravel driveway stretched out silent under the moonlight. Not a single tree branch moved, no breeze, no sound. I opened the door, slowly, stepped out and looked around with my phone light. Nothing. Then I turned back and the rocking chair on the porch creaked. Just once. A low wooden groan, like someone had just stood up from it. Thing is, I hadn't touched that chair all day, and it had rained that morning. Everything else was still damp except that seat, completely dry. I stood there for a minute, just breathing. Then I locked everything. Deadbolts, latches, even that dumb old sliding wood wedge for the back door. Whatever had knocked, real or not, I wasn't planning on welcoming it in. An hour passed. I was almost starting to settle again when everything just stopped. The power didn't flicker. It cut. Lights out. No warning. Just gone. And the silence that followed felt like something hollowing out my chest. No fridge hum. No wind outside, not even the soft tick of the wall clock anymore. Just pitch black and heavy, like the house itself had gone still to listen. I lit a candle, sat at the kitchen table and stared at the flame. I wasn't scared exactly, not yet, just alert. That's when I heard footsteps on the roof. Measured, solid, one slow step at a time. Not animals, not tree limbs, someone walking. From one end of the house to the other, from above the kitchen, over the bedroom, then looping back. I didn't move, not an inch. After 5, maybe 10 minutes, they stopped. Not like they jumped down or climbed off, just stopped. I didn't feel relieved, just more aware that the quiet wasn't safe anymore. I sat there until the candle melted halfway down, trying not to blink too loud. Then came the whisper, not a voice, not actual words. Just the sound of breath pushing through the gap at the bottom of the front door, followed by a soft dragging noise, like fingertips brushing the porch planks. I stood slowly, reached for the flashlight. It clicked, then died. Smacked it. Nothing. Then the candle went out. I held my breath so long, my chest ached, waited for my eyes to adjust, but the dark just stayed thick. Then another sound, a metallic scrape. From outside, around the side of the house, where the cellar doors were, the old storm doors. I remembered locking them right after I moved in. Padlock, chain, the whole thing. I didn't check. I couldn't. I stayed inside, kept still, waited. The night dragged. Every tiny sound made me clench. I didn't sleep. When the sun finally rose, the power came back like nothing had happened. Lights popped on. The fridge buzzed to life. I walked outside like someone checking for a body they hoped wasn't there. The rocking chair was turned, angled toward the woods now, and the cellar doors cracked open. I grabbed a hammer and my phone, finally showing a signal bar or two. Went down the cellar steps one at a time, flashlight trembling. Everything looked normal until I saw the footprints. Bare feet. One set, muddy, fresh. Too small to be mine. Too big for a kid. They ended right at the base of the far wall. I called the county sheriff, told him everything, even the parts that sounded ridiculous. A deputy came out that afternoon, gave the place a once-over. He wasn't rude or anything, just unconvinced. Said it might be local kids. Prank gone too far. I asked how they'd even get out here without a car or cell reception. He just shrugged, said it happens. That night, I nailed the cellar doors shut, used real nails, thick ones, checked every window twice. I stayed up, sitting by the kitchen table again, candle in front of me, and right at 9 o'clock, a single knock. From the back wall, I didn't answer. I didn't even stand. I sat there until morning again. By daylight, the cellar doors were still shut, but something had scratched along the edge of the wood. Long, uneven lines, like nails. Human, maybe. Not quite. I lasted 3 more nights. On the 4th morning, I packed my truck, left everything I couldn't carry. Furniture, tools, even the damn rocking chair. I didn't care. I drove back to Maryland without stopping once. I still own the house, but haven't been back. Nina, my girlfriend at the time, had gone out of town to spend a long Halloween weekend with her family in Vermont. I stayed back, mostly because of work, but also because I'd agreed to keep an eye on our grandparents' place while they were away. They lived in a little mountain town called Elbridge, pretty much wedged in the dense lower ridges of the Appalachians. When I first got there, I remember how still everything felt, like nothing had moved for a long time. I wasn't planning anything fancy for Halloween, just chilly, a few beers, maybe some bad horror movies on TV. Nina had warned me there wouldn't be any trick-or-treaters. It was too far out, and the town was tiny anyway, but her grandparents had still put up a few decorations before they left. A stitched-up scarecrow on the porch swing, some fake cobwebs strung around the railings, and this old rusted sign by the mailbox that said cider, welcome, in big crooked lettering. The scarecrow always caught my eye, mostly because it didn't quite look like a store-bought one. It was too tall, arms too stiff, and the head looked like someone had hand-stitched the face with thick thread and old fabric. It sat slumped on the swing, facing out toward the gravel drive like a friendly lookout. Around 6, I got the chili going, and the place started to smell halfway inviting. I was just starting to relax when I heard it. 3 knocks. Not the doorbell, just solid, deliberate knocks. Like knuckles against wood. It made me freeze mid-step, one hand still on the stove dial. Because seriously, nobody came out here. You had to know the roads and make a real effort just to find the driveway. I walked to the front and opened the door. Porch was empty. The scarecrow was still there, unmoved, swaying gently like the swing had caught a breeze. I checked the steps. No footprints, no packages. No wind strong enough to knock something loose. Just quiet woods and the last bits of orange fading behind the hills. I stood there longer than I needed to, just listening. Eventually, I went back in and convinced myself I'd imagined it. Maybe the house had settled. Maybe it had been something shifting on the porch. I even laughed at myself a little, because I knew how these kinds of stories went, and I wasn't about to become one of them. Then it happened again. 3 knocks, this time from the back. There was a narrow mudroom at the back of the house that opened to a covered carport. I had left that door locked earlier, I was sure of it. I walked through the kitchen slowly, grabbed the fire poker from the fireplace just to be safe, and eased open the back door. Nothing. The trees behind the house were darker now, thicker somehow. The bird feeder by the gutter swung lazily, creaking slightly, but there was no wind. No footprints on the cement, no animals I could see. Just that same quiet stillness that had started to feel less peaceful and more expectant. I shut the door and locked it again, harder this time. Double-checked the windows. I even texted Nina, asking if there was any chance a neighbor was dropping by, or if someone in town liked playing Halloween pranks. She didn't answer. I sat back down, poker beside me, phone in hand. I watched the TV without really watching it. Then, again, 3 knocks, left side of the house. There wasn't even a door on that side. Just a wall, a few narrow windows, and a row of bushes brushing against the siding. I didn't move this time. I sat frozen on the edge of the couch, barely breathing. I don't know what I was expecting. I just knew that whatever was going on, it wasn't random. That's when the power cut out. Everything died at once. TV, lights, fridge hum, gone. Not even a flicker. Just this total, immediate silence. Even the clock on the microwave went blank. I stood up, flashlight already in my hand, and stared toward the front door. The stained glass panel above it was glowing faintly in the moonlight, and behind it, I saw the scarecrow. It was standing now. Before, it had been sitting. I remembered seeing it through the window earlier, just slumped there like a decoration. But now it was upright, right in front of the door, facing inward. Arms were up, palms pressed flat against the glass like it was peering inside. I didn't even breathe, just backed into the kitchen slowly and flicked on the flashlight. I didn't pull the curtain back, just aimed the beam toward the porch. Porch swing was empty, nothing there. No figure, no movement. Then I heard it, footsteps, above me. Slow, heavy, measured steps, crossing the upstairs floor with the kind of rhythm that told you whoever it was wasn't in a hurry. I hadn't gone up there yet. Nina had told me the upstairs bedroom was drafty and hardly used, so I hadn't bothered. But now, I had to. I climbed the stairs slowly, one creaking board at a time. Flashlight in one hand, poker in the other. The attic door was shut. It had been open when I arrived. I remember thinking it looked weird, crooked on the hinges. I opened it. Window was wide open. The breeze made the curtains billow, and cold air poured in like water. One of the quilts on the bed was half pulled down, like someone had been sitting on it. But no one was in the room, except for the boots in the corner, caked in dry mud, heavy, pointed outward, like someone had just stepped out of them. I didn't touch them, didn't even get close. Just backed out, closed the door, and locked it. Back downstairs, I tried calling Nina again. Still nothing. For a while, everything was still. The candles I'd lit made the room feel smaller, and the house creaked like it was settling again, but nothing new happened. I even started to believe I'd overreacted. Then the landline rang. Yeah, landline. I hadn't even noticed it before. Old plastic phone with a spiral cord, mounted beside the pantry. I stared at it. It rang 3 times. I picked it up, breathing. Not static breathing. Low and steady, like someone close to the receiver. Then, click. That was it. I threw on my coat, grabbed my keys, and opened the front door. The scarecrow was back on the swing, but different now. Its arms were crossed over its chest. Its head was turned facing the door, and there were muddy footprints going up the steps, but none going down. I didn't look twice. Just ran to the car, started it, and drove straight into town. Didn't stop until I hit a strip mall. Halloween fell on a Tuesday that year, and I was house sitting for my aunt, who lived in this little Appalachian town called Draycott. My aunt's house sat at the very edge of it all, way up in the hills. She was off in Tennessee for a Bible conference and asked me to stay for the week, mostly to take care of her 2 dogs, Margot and Skip, and keep the place from falling apart. I didn't have much going on, so I figured, sure, why not? It sounded quiet, maybe even relaxing. The first 3 nights were calm, almost too calm. I'd wake up, feed the dogs, watch a few movies, scroll through my phone until the signal dropped. which happened constantly, and eventually pass out to the sound of cicadas and creaky pipes. I wasn't expecting trick-or-treaters up there, not that deep into the woods, but I still picked up a small bag of candy from the gas station in town, just in case. Seemed wrong not to. Halloween night, I fed the dogs around 6. Margot, the older one, took her spot on the couch. Skip lay down near the front door like a rug with legs. I turned on the porch light, poured the candy into a bowl, and set it on the railing outside. Didn't expect anyone to hike up that far, but hey, tradition. I microwaved one of those plastic tray lasagnas, put on an old slasher movie, and let the evening coast by. Around 9, I was dozing off in the recliner, half asleep, belly full, just enough unease from the movie to make the creaks in the house feel intentional. Then the doorbell rang. It startled me, not because of the sound, but because of how loud it was in the middle of all that quiet. I sat up fast. The weird thing was the dogs didn't even twitch. No barking, no ear perk, just silence, like they didn't hear it or didn't want to. That bell was the old kind, the kind you have to press in hard to get it to ring. It hadn't gone off once since I'd been there. I waited a second. Nothing else. No footsteps. No voices. Figured maybe it was a very late trick-or-treater who'd already run off, so I got up and headed to the front door. It had a stained glass window right at eye level, all yellows and reds in this kind of warped mosaic. Looked nice during the day, totally useless at night. I opened the door. No one. The candy bowl was untouched. The gravel path leading to the driveway was empty. The woods beyond it were still. Not even a breeze. Just as I was about to step back inside, the porch light flickered once, quick, like a blink, then held steady again. That was enough for me to step out onto the porch, walk to the edge, and scan the tree line. Nothing moved. No crunch of leaves, no rustling, no voices. Just quiet that felt thicker than it should have been. I turned back and went inside. That's when I saw the dogs. Both were standing now, still, alert. They weren't looking at me or the door. I realized they were facing the kitchen. Neither was barking. They weren't growling either. Just locked in place, ears up, bodies tense, staring at something I couldn't see. I turned and looked. The back door was wide open, and that stopped me. Like cold. I hadn't touched that door. I was sure of it. I kept it shut tight, with the bolt thrown. Because the latch was sticky, you had to really pull and jiggle it to get it to catch properly. There's no way it could have just swung open. I walked over, shut it, made sure it latched this time, and locked it again. Hard. The dogs didn't follow me. They stayed exactly where they were, still pointed toward the kitchen, eyes on that same spot. I started checking windows, first the kitchen, then the living room, then upstairs. All of them still locked. Same with the side door. Everything seemed untouched. No broken latches. No muddy footprints. No signs of a break-in. I even called out just a soft, hello? Like a dumb character in a movie. Nothing answered. The house was quiet again. I sat back down in the recliner, turned the volume on the TV way down, and tried to settle myself. Told myself it was probably just the wind, or maybe I'd left the back door cracked without realizing. But 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang again. This time, I didn't hesitate. I stood right up and opened the door. Still no one. I walked onto the porch and scanned the yard again. Stood there for a good minute, just listening, hoping to catch a rustle or a crunch of gravel. But there was nothing. The trees were just a wall of stillness. Then, as I turned to go back in, I saw something new. On the porch rail, next to the bowl of untouched candy, was a coin. Old. Worn so smooth I couldn't make out the face or markings. It definitely hadn't been there earlier. I picked it up. Cold to the touch. Heavier than a quarter. I slipped it into my pocket and went back inside. Locked the door again. Dragged the armchair over and wedged it tight against it. Not because I thought it would stop anyone, just made me feel less exposed. The dogs were still restless. Skip kept walking slow circles around the coffee table, sniffing the air like something invisible had passed through. Margot would sit for a minute, stand, then move to the window and stare out like she was waiting for something to appear. Then, Just before midnight, everything cut out. TV, lights, porch light, all of it. Gone. No storm, no wind, just sudden black. I didn't move. Didn't even breathe for a few seconds. The darkness felt thick, like it had weight, Then I heard something, a voice, from the back of the house. Not loud, not whispering, just steady, calm. A man's voice, I think. Couldn't make out what he was saying, but it wasn't chanting or yelling. It sounded like a conversation, or a lecture, like someone explaining something to someone else. The dogs had gone still again. I crept into the hallway and stood near the guest room door, the one with the rocking chair covered by a sheet. The voice was coming from there. The door was open. I crouched low, pressed my back to the wall and edged closer, trying to hear the words. Still couldn't make them out. But the rhythm didn't change. No pauses, no emotion, just this weird, constant tone. I leaned in far enough to see the floor of the room. Empty. Chair still covered. Desk untouched. Nobody there. But the voice didn't stop. In fact, it got louder. It was coming from under the bed. I backed up fast. Still crouched, still trying not to make noise. But I moved straight to the kitchen and grabbed the biggest knife in the drawer. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip it with both just to keep it steady. And that's when the doorbell rang again. 3 times. Rapid. Ding dong. Ding dong. Ding dong. The dogs exploded, barking like mad. I ran to the front window. The porch light was back on. And on the rail next to the candy bowl were 3 more coins. Same kind. Same worn down look. The candy, still untouched. And just past the driveway, in the shadows between the trees, I caught a flicker of something. Not a person, not an animal, just movement. I didn't wait to find out what it was. I shut the door again, locked it, and shoved the armchair tighter against it. The lights flickered once, came back on. The voice stopped. The dogs went quiet. I sat in the kitchen the rest of the night, with the knife in my lap and my back against the wall. Every sound made me flinch. Every creak felt deliberate. At first light, I packed my bag, grabbed my stuff, and left. Didn't even shower. I drove into town, parked at the first gas station with signal, and called my aunt. Told her I couldn't finish the week. Said something vague about not feeling well. My sister Leah had asked if I could house sit while she took the kids to see Mark's family in Indiana. They'd only just moved into a place outside a town called Kinley, a tiny, out-of-the-way spot in the Appalachians I'd never heard of before. Leah left early on Halloween morning with the kids bundled in the back seat and Mark already ahead of them. She waved, said the freezer was full and the Wi-Fi was iffy, and then drove off like she couldn't wait to get back to normal civilization. I watched her taillights disappear down the gravel, then walked back inside and shut the door behind me. By the time the sun dipped behind the ridge, I was alone. I heated up some leftover lasagna Leah had left in the fridge and queued up a true crime podcast I'd been trying to catch up on. The usual comfort combo: bad audio and worse decisions. I curled up on their old couch under a throw blanket and tried not to think too hard about how dark it was outside, or how the only light around came from inside the house. I was halfway through dinner, halfway through an episode about a guy who faked his own disappearance, when I heard a knock. Not the doorbell, just a single knock. Dull, flat, like the kind of knock you give when you're not sure you're at the right house. I paused the podcast, sat still, waited a few seconds before standing up. I walked to the front door and peeked through the peephole. No one. The porch was empty, and the motion light above the door hadn't come on either. Still, I opened the door, kind of expecting to see maybe a squirrel on the porch or a fallen branch or literally anything that would explain it. But no, there was a pumpkin. A small one, placed right at the edge of the doormat. It definitely hadn't been there earlier. I stepped out and looked around. No cars on the drive. No voices. No rustling leaves. Just the trees lining the property, tall and still. The pumpkin was weird. It had a carved face, but not a normal one. No jagged smile, no goofy triangle eyes. just two narrow vertical slits for eyes, and a thin, expressionless oval for a mouth. Like a neutral emoji, but off. I figured maybe it was some local kid's idea of a prank. Halloween in the middle of nowhere. I guess you get creative. I brought it inside and locked the door again, put the pumpkin on the kitchen table, and went back to the couch. About 10 minutes later, I heard another knock. 2 this time, quicker. I sat up straight and just listened. Another 2 knocks, exactly the same rhythm. I got up, walked to the door again, checked the peephole. Nothing. But when I opened it, there was another pumpkin on the porch. Same size, same weird face, same exact spot as the last one. I didn't touch it. I just stared out into the trees, trying to see if someone was watching, waiting, laughing maybe. But there was nothing. No wind, no bugs, no motion light. Just that creepy little pumpkin and a whole lot of nothing else. I left it there and closed the door. Then I turned around, and the first pumpkin had changed. The mouth wasn't the same. It was still the same shape, technically oval, but now it was longer, wider, like someone had pulled the edges of the carving outward with their thumbs. I hadn't touched it. I walked up to it slowly, leaned in, trying to make sure I wasn't imagining it. Maybe I just remembered it wrong. Maybe the weirdness was getting in my head. I took a picture with my phone, just to be sure. Then I went upstairs to use the bathroom and splash some water on my face. When I came back down, the second pumpkin was inside the house. It was on the table, right next to the first one. I stopped halfway down the stairs. My whole body just locked up. I hadn't brought it in. I would have heard the door. I would have seen someone come in. But the front door was still locked. And now the second pumpkin was different too. It had 3 eye slits, not side by side, stacked vertically like a totem pole. And no mouth at all this time. I didn't move. I don't think I even blinked. Then the lights flickered, just once. And when they came back, both pumpkins were facing away from me. I didn't even bother grabbing my bag. Just coat, phone, keys. I was going to drive into Kinley, stay at some roadside motel, and come back in the morning. But when I opened the door, a third pumpkin was sitting on the porch, smaller than the others, almost child-sized. I lost it a little, kicked it hard off the steps. It hit the gravel and rolled into the grass. I ran to my car and jumped in, turned the key. Nothing. No click, no rumble, just silence. Like the battery wasn't even connected. I checked my phone again. Still no signal. No bars, no Wi-Fi. I tried calling Leah anyway. The call dropped before it even rang. So I sat in the car, windows fogging, heart pounding, trying to think of what the hell I was supposed to do. There were no neighbors, no Uber, no one to wave down. I didn't even want to walk the road at night, not with whatever this was. Eventually, I gave up, decided to wait it out till morning and just barricade myself upstairs. When I went back inside, the pumpkins were gone. Every last one. But on the kitchen floor, where they had been, were 3 stains. Faint orange, almost like watercolor paint, but shaped exactly like sitting figures. I backed away slowly, eyes locked on those shapes, then bolted up the stairs. I locked the bedroom door and pushed the dresser in front of it, then sat on the floor, knees up, phone in hand, like it was going to do anything. Around 2 a.m., I started hearing footsteps, not stomping, soft, careful. They moved from the living room to the kitchen, then slowly back again, and then they stopped, right below me. I didn't move, didn't breathe. They stayed there for a long time, like whoever or whatever it was knew I was above them and was just waiting. Eventually, they faded. No footsteps going out, just gone. I didn't sleep, just sat on the floor staring at the dresser, waiting for something to move. But the sun came up. Light started leaking through the blinds, and everything was quiet. When I finally worked up the nerve to go downstairs, the kitchen was spotless. No pumpkins, no stains, nothing. The door was still locked. My car started on the first try. I didn't even leave a note, just got in the car and drove. Halloween fell on a Tuesday that year, and Langdon's little town parade had packed up by sundown. I lived just outside Langdon, up a narrow, winding hill road that turns into gravel before you reach my place. I've got a split-level house tucked into the base of some woods, and the nearest house is maybe half a mile away. We don't see each other much, and cell service out here drops off before you even hit my driveway. Which, honestly, is how I like it. It's quiet. No one drops by unless they really mean to. That night, I left a bowl of mini Snickers on the front steps like I always do. Mostly out of tradition. I didn't expect any kids. They never come this far out. The hill's too steep and the road's too dark. Most families in Langdon take their kids into the main drag where it's well lit and everyone knows each other. I stayed in. Made myself a good dinner roasted acorn squash with olive oil and pepper, and poured a glass of warm cider with a splash of bourbon. One of those quiet, satisfying nights where you feel like the world's finally settled down. I tossed on The Fog, which I've seen enough times to quote half the dialogue, and curled up on the couch with a blanket and the fire going. Around 10, I let the wood stove burn down, rinsed my plate, and started the usual routine. Nothing fancy. Just brushing my teeth, turning out lights, locking up. Same steps I do every night. Then I heard it. 3 knocks. Not on the screen door that has a looser, rattly sound. These were slow, heavy thuds against the main door itself. Dull. Flat. Close. Close. I paused, toothbrush still in my mouth, and listened. No voices outside. No crunch of footsteps. No sound of tires. I flicked off the bathroom light and stepped into the hallway. Then, again, 3 knocks. Slower this time, spaced out. Like whoever it was wanted me to notice the silence between each one. I didn't go charging for the door. I just stood there for a few seconds, waiting, trying to feel out what I was dealing with. Trick-or-treaters wouldn't be out this late, and there were no headlights through the windows. No motion sensor lights either, just the knock. I walked over and looked through the peephole. Nothing. I hesitated, then unlatched the door and opened it just a few inches. Still nothing. The porch was empty. The bowl of candy hadn't been touched. No wrappers on the ground. No tracks on the concrete. I closed the door, turned the lock, and stood there with my hand still on the knob for a while. Back door next. I walked through the kitchen, turned on the little over-sink light, and checked the handle. Locked. I even went around tapping the window locks. It felt unnecessary, but I couldn't shake the sound of those knocks. There wasn't anything aggressive about them. They weren't pounding, but they were present. Like whoever knocked was confident I'd come. I opened the junk drawer, pulled out the flashlight, and threw on my boots, circled the house slowly. No footprints. No broken branches. No sound except for a few leaves stirring in the trees. The gravel was untouched. Nothing around the porch. No sign that anyone had come up the drive at all. Inside again. Double-checked the front and back locks. Sat down on the couch with the TV still playing, but I couldn't focus on the movie anymore. My ears were tuned to every little noise. The ice maker clicking, the pipes creaking. It all sounded too loud. I hit mute. And that's when I heard it again. Footsteps. Not outside. Upstairs. Soft. Uneven. Like someone shifting their weight between boards. I didn't move at first. Just stared up the dark staircase from the living room, my hand halfway to the flashlight on the coffee table. I live alone. That part's important. No roommates. No pets. And I hadn't been upstairs since Saturday. I stood, quiet as I could. The floor creaked under my heels. I picked up the flashlight but didn't turn it on. The 4-stair creaks always has. It did that night too. The sound echoed too much in the silence. At the top of the stairs, I waited. My pulse felt too loud in my ears. From the guest room, a soft shuffle, a drag, like fabric brushing over something. I walked toward it, slow and steady. The door was already open. Inside, nothing. The bed hadn't been touched. The blanket was still smooth flat. Window latched. Closet doors open just like I'd left them. I turned and checked the office. Same thing. Desk untouched. Chair pushed in. No drawers open. Still, I stayed up there for a while just listening, then finally walked back down. And that's when I noticed the bowl of candy. It had moved. Not much, just an inch to the left, but I remembered where I'd placed it. I remember lining it up with the seam between two tiles. Now it was off-center. Then I saw the back door. It was wide open. The curtain was swaying gently. I walked over, flashlight gripped tight, and stood in the open doorway. The latch wasn't broken. Nothing was forced. It was just unlocked, like someone had opened it from the inside. I checked everything again. Under the porch, the crawl space, even the attic hatch, which I hadn't touched since I moved in. All clear. I grabbed a hammer from the shed, sat back on the couch, and turned every light on in the house. The flashlight stayed on my lap. I wasn't about to fall asleep, but I couldn't keep pacing either. Then, right when the adrenaline started wearing off, knock. 3 again, but this time it came from behind me. The window behind the couch. I didn't turn. That window opens to a blank wall. No ledge, no porch roof, no tree branch. Just flat siding that goes up 2 full stories. The knock came again. Harder. The glass didn't rattle. It didn't crack. It just thudded once, sharp and clear. I stood slowly, keeping my eyes forward, and turned to face it. The window was clean. No handprints. No smudges. No marks at all. But the TV had unmuted itself. Static, full volume. I didn't go near the remote. I just walked over and unplugged the TV from the wall. I didn't sleep in the house that night. I locked up every door and window, grabbed a blanket and pillow, and crashed in the cab of my truck. Windows up, doors locked. Wait until the sunrise. That year, Halloween landed on a Friday, which should have made it a big deal, but around here, it never really is. Jeremy and I were both way too old for it, honestly. I think he was 15, and I just turned 16 that August. At that age, you know you're pushing it. But we figured, screw it, one last run. We threw on half-ass costumes. He wore an old pirate mask that was missing the elastic, and I found some red face paint from last year and smeared it across my eyes. I told people I was a zombie wrestler. No one asked questions. We headed out just after dinner. The sky had already gone dark, and we could hear the smaller kids squealing in the distance, dragging plastic pumpkins up and down the sidewalks. Their parents followed behind with flashlights and thermoses full of whatever kept them warm. Sand Hollow looked the same as always. Neat little porches lit up with string lights, plastic skeletons slumped over in lawn chairs, the occasional inflatable ghost wobbling in the breeze. Every house had something going on, and everyone knew everyone else. You couldn't trick or treat there without running into someone's aunt or old babysitter. We hit the Brightons first. They handed us full Snickers bars. Then the Glens, who'd gone for some kind of old-timey soda in a bottle thing this year. We were halfway through Miss Laney's story about her cat dressing up as a pumpkin when Jeremy leaned over and elbowed me. Look. He was pointing down the street, toward the Martin house. It was hard to tell at first, but there was definitely a porch light on. Now, that was weird. That place had been dead for years. It used to belong to Mr. Martin, this quiet, hunched-over guy who wore the same gray cardigan every day like it was glued to him. He died 2 Halloweens ago, and no one had touched the house since. The windows had boards nailed across them. The mailbox was always packed with junk flyers, and the porch sagged like a warped seesaw. But that night, the orange bulb above the front door was glowing, and there was a bowl of candy sitting out, just barely visible from the sidewalk. Jeremy slowed down. You think someone moved in? I shook my head. Doubt it. Probably just someone putting out candy. Family member or something. He didn't seem sure. We both knew no one had been in that place since the fire. You could still see the smoke stains around the second-floor windows, but the porch light was on, and that bowl of candy was just sitting there, like it belonged. We walked up the front steps slowly, half expecting them to give out under our weight. The wood creaked and groaned like it was trying to warn us, but it held. The bowl sat on the railing. Full-size Kit Kats, some Reese's, the good stuff. No wrapper tears, no signs of weather damage, just fresh. I reached out, hand hovering over the candy, and that's when the front door opened. No slam, no bang, just a slow, deliberate creak, like someone inside had been waiting and finally decided we were close enough. It opened inward, revealing nothing but a long, dark hallway. There wasn't anyone standing there. I froze, fingers still above the Kit Kats. Jeremy let out a nervous laugh, the kind that comes out too high and too forced. Okay, that's creepy. We stood there, waiting, listening. Nothing moved. No voices, no footsteps. Just that gaping black rectangle where the door used to be. He called out, "Hello?" Still no answer. Then I heard it. This strange sound from inside, not a voice exactly, more like a whispering movement. Like air rushing through narrow spaces, flicking from side to side, as if the walls themselves were breathing. I should have backed off right then. But something about Jeremy's posture, the way he was trying so hard to act unfazed, made me dig in. I didn't want to be the one to chicken out. "It's probably a Halloween thing," I said, like motion activated. "Some kind of spooky prop." Jeremy squinted inside. "Then where's the speaker?" "Good question." We stepped into the entryway, just past the threshold. The air hit me immediately. Ice cold. Not like autumn chill. This was inside the freezer cold. My skin prickled. My throat felt dry, like I'd swallowed dust. There was nothing in the house. No furniture. No curtains. Just bare wooden floors and a hallway that stretched way farther than I remembered. That's what hit me next. The layout was wrong. I'd been in this house before, years ago. There used to be a small entry area with a coat rack, and to the right, it opened into a living room with brown carpet and a dusty armchair. Now, it was just a straight corridor that looked like it didn't belong in any real house. Like someone had taken a normal floor plan and stretched it out like taffy. Candy wrappers littered the floor, not in a pile, just scattered. Like someone had walked down the hallway, dropping them one by one behind them. I looked over my shoulder. The candy bowl was still outside. Still full, still untouched. My stomach turned. Jeremy leaned close and whispered, "I think someone's in here." I opened my mouth to say something, but then the hallway lit up, just at the far end. A faint yellow glow flickered to life, almost greenish, like a dying bulb hanging from a string. And then we heard footsteps. Not hurried, not loud. Just this slow, dragging step, like someone walking barefoot across loose planks. The kind of sound that makes you picture wet feet and dirty soles. We bolted, straight out the door, down the porch steps, and back onto the street. Neither of us said a word. We didn't even stop to check behind us until we hit the corner and turned back. The house looked normal again. Front door closed, porch light on, candy bowl still sitting there, neat and untouched. Except, now there was someone in the front window. We couldn't see a face. Just the outline of a person standing completely still, framed by the light swinging gently behind them. Like it was hanging from a cord in the middle of the hallway, swaying back and forth. No wind, no motion, just that slow pendulum rhythm that made my chest go tight. We turned and kept walking. Didn't run this time, didn't talk either. We just walked until we hit the main road. Then we ran the rest of the way to Jeremy's place. That night, I told my mom. I expected her to say we were imagining things, or that it was just someone messing with us. But she didn't. She said, "That house has been empty since the fire. No one's supposed to be in there." That stuck with me. The next afternoon, we rode our bikes past it just to check. In daylight, it looked worse than I remembered. The porch was completely empty. No bowl, no decorations. The boards were back up on the side windows, nailed tight like they'd never been removed. There was a city notice stapled to the front door. Condemned. Unsafe for entry. Dated 2 weeks earlier. No sign of candy. No person in the window. Just a dead house looking like it always had. We didn't talk about it again. Not really. Every once in a while, Jeremy would bring it up as a joke, say something like, "You want to hit the Martin place this year?" And I'd pretend to laugh, but it never felt funny. 2 years later, Halloween came around again. A kid from Jeremy's school went missing that night. 8th grader. Supposed to be trick-or-treating with friends. but he split off on his own to grab one last handful of candy before curfew. They found his costume and his pillowcase on the sidewalk in front of the Martin house. The door was open. The candy bowl was back on the porch. I haven't gone trick-or-treating since that night. That year, Halloween landed on a Saturday, which felt like the universe throwing us a bone. A whole weekend for costumes, sugar crashes, and maybe a scary movie or two if you could convince your parents to look the other way. There were maybe 10, 11 houses along the ridge that actually handed out candy. It had turned into a tradition among the local kids. Lane was supposed to come with me. We'd been planning it for weeks, matching zombie costumes, maybe scaring some of the younger kids for fun, nothing too mean. But he got into it with his mom earlier that day, something about backtalk and an overdue report card, and she shut it down fast. I thought about staying in. Going alone felt lame, but I'd already put together my costume, and honestly, I didn't want to waste the one night the world let us be a little weird. I headed out a little after 6. The sun was low, but it wasn't quite dark yet. I shoved my flashlight into the front pocket of my hoodie and grabbed a pillowcase for candy. My costume was lazy but kind of creepy in its own way. A black hoodie, a dollar store skull mask, and those gloves with glow-in-the-dark bones on them. It was all stuff I already had lying around. First stop was Mrs. Biss's. Greeley's house. She always handed out those little bags of pretzels and called everyone sugar. Next was the Macklins, who went hard every year with full-size candy bars in a bowl of plastic spiders for show. I saw a couple other kids heading the opposite direction, but no one I really knew. I just waved and kept walking. By the time I reached the stretch of road near the quarry, it was getting properly dark. My flashlight beam bounced off loose gravel and tangled underbrush. The woods on either side of the road felt closer than usual, like they were leaning in. I kept walking, humming to myself just to fill the quiet. Then I saw it, the Holloway house. Everyone knew about it, even if no one talked about it much. It sat at the far edge of the loop, right where the road curved around a steep drop near the quarry line. The place had been empty since before I was born. No lights, no signs of life. Just a slanted tin roof and siding the color of old bones. One of the porch columns had caved in, and the front steps looked like they'd collapse if you breathed too hard. I'd passed it before, always on the opposite side of the road, eyes forward. You didn't linger near it. Nobody did. But that night, there was something different. A jack-o'-lantern sat on the porch. It was lit from the inside, flickering low and uneven. Its grin was carved wide and crooked, teeth jagged like someone had used a steak knife. The eyes were triangles but sliced straight through the middle, like slashes. It looked wrong. And the zest of the sense is all the caste of the sway. Not scary in a Halloween store kind of way, but careless, mean. And it hadn't been there yesterday. I was sure of that. Lane and I had walked this way 2 days earlier, just to kill time, and the porch had been completely empty. I stopped in front of the old gate. It leaned to one side, straining against rusted hinges. The whole scene felt staged, like someone had set a trap but hadn't hidden it well. There were no other decorations, no fake cobwebs, no orange lights, no music, just that one pumpkin burning low in the dark. I told myself someone new had probably moved in, maybe trying to fix the place up. People had done worse for a cheap mortgage. I pushed open the gate and flinched at the loud metallic creak. The porch groaned under my weight as I walked up the steps. They didn't give way, but they flexed under each step like they were thinking about it. I knocked on the front door. Nothing. No movement, no sounds from inside, just the wind in the trees and my own breathing in the mask. I knocked again. Still nothing. I was about to turn and leave when the door opened. Not all the way, just halfway. It moved slowly, like someone nudged it from inside and let it swing on its own. I waited. Still no sound. Then I saw the candle. It was sitting on the floor just inside the doorway, next to a plastic Halloween bowl, the kind you buy in a pack of 3. The bowl was filled with candy mini peanut butter cups, lollipops, Smarties. A folded piece of paper leaned against it. In all caps, someone had written, "Take one." I stood there a second longer, trying to decide if I was about to get pranked. But the room beyond the candle was empty. No furniture, no movement. Just this slow, moldy smell seeping out through the open door. I stepped inside, just enough to reach the bowl. The floor groaned louder than the porch, like something underneath was shifting its weight. I reached down, grabbed a single lollipop, and turned to go. The door slammed behind me, hard, loud. I jumped and dropped the lollipop, whirled around and grabbed the doorknob, twisting fast. Nothing. It didn't move. It wasn't even locked. It just wouldn't turn. I pulled harder. Still nothing. The candle snuffed out. I stood in pitch black for a beat, trying to catch my breath, then flicked on my flashlight. The beam cut across torn wallpaper and boarded windows, dust in the air. The whole place looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Then I saw it, an orange glow, faint and flickering, deeper in the house. I didn't want to go toward it. Every part of me said not to, but I didn't really have a choice. I followed the glow to the kitchen. The tile was cracked, the ceiling bowed from water damage. On the counter sat another candle, another bowl, another note. Good, take one more. This time, the candy was different. Foil-wrapped chocolate eyeballs, striped peppermints, weird off-brand taffy, and twisted wax paper. I didn't touch it. I just stood there, staring. Then I heard footsteps. Upstairs, slow, deliberate steps. Not pacing. Just one step, then another, like someone walking on a creaky old floor and letting each board groan under their weight. Then silence. Then a loud TH, thud, as if something dropped hard onto the floor above me. My mouth was dry. I backed toward the kitchen door, then darted to the front room and tried the windows. Every single one was nailed shut. Old nails. Deep. I pressed my fingers to the glass, but it didn't move. When I turned around, the first bowl and candle were gone. I don't mean moved, I mean gone. The entryway was empty. The only light left was from the kitchen behind me. And that's when the steps started again, this time on the stairs. I bolted. No plan, no thought. Just straight back to the kitchen, hoping for a back door. There wasn't one. The only thing open was the pantry. I climbed inside and pulled the door shut behind me, crouching low between broken shelves and mouse droppings. My flashlight flickered once and held. I turned it off. Silence. Then soft, dragging steps across the floor. Slow, bare feet. They stopped just outside the pantry. Then 3 soft taps. Right on the door, not loud, not angry, just polite. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. Then I saw it. A folded note on the floor just inside the pantry. It hadn't been there before. It said, "You took one. You took one more. Now, one must stay." I kicked the door open, flashlight ready. The room was empty. The front door was wide open. I didn't hesitate. I ran. Didn't stop running until I reached the gravel at the edge of our driveway, lungs burning. When my parents asked why I was back so early, I said I got spooked by a dog past the quarry. They shrugged it off. The next morning, I convinced Lane to come with me, just to look, just to prove I hadn't lost it. The Holloway house looked worse, in daylight collapsed porch, roof caving in, vines swallowing the siding. No jack-o'-lantern, no door, no sign anyone had been there for decades. But sitting right there on the porch steps was my plastic skull mask. I didn't touch it. I didn't say anything. We turned around and walked home in silence. The town I moved to was called Mayfield Hollow. Tiny place, out near the edge of the Appalachian foothills. I was renting the top floor of a split-level farmhouse at the far end of Willow Run Road. The place was old, but the rent was cheap, and I didn't need much space. Downstairs lived the Crawfords, Lyle and Fern, probably in their 60s, maybe older. Always dressed like they were headed to a casual funeral. He wore buttoned cardigans with slacks. She always had on these flower print dresses with little collars. Their hair never looked messy. Their speech never slipped. And every time I bumped into them on the stairs or in the driveway, they both smiled a little too long. They were polite. Creepy, but polite. And honestly, I was just happy to have neighbors who didn't throw loud parties or blast music. You'd think that would be the end of it, but things got odd. It started with their porch. Around the second week of October, they put up decorations for Halloween, if you could call them that, not pumpkins. These long, narrow gourds, carved with tiny slits for eyes. No mouths, no candles, just these eerie, blank things. Always 7 of them. Every year, Lyle lined them up perfectly on the porch rail, all facing the road like they were watching for something. One night, I was up late working. I freelance, so my hours are weird, and I heard this noise from below. At first, I thought it was furniture being dragged, a slow, scraping sound, like something heavy sliding across wood. But it kept happening, always after midnight, sometimes closer to 3. Same pattern. That slow pull, then silence. Then again, never fast. Always just slow enough to feel deliberate. I knocked on their door one morning to ask if maybe they were moving things around at night. Lyle opened it. Smiling, like always, he said, "Things tend to shift at night. That's just how the house breathes." He said it like it was a line from a book, like he'd been waiting to say it. I laughed politely and left it alone, but it stuck with me. That phrase, it felt wrong. Halloween night rolled around. I wasn't expecting much. This town didn't really do costumes or trick-or-treating. Still, I picked up a bag of candy. Habit, I guess. 8 o'clock came and went. No knocks. At 9, just as I was thinking of turning in, there it was, a knock at the door. I got up, opened it, and no one was there. Just a single gourd sitting on the welcome mat. Same kind as the ones on the Crawford's porch. But this one was different. It had a long slit down the side, almost like it had been torn instead of carved. And it smelled awful, like meat that had been left out too long, wet and sour. I picked it up by the stem and carried it out back behind the shed, tossed it into the trash bin, and wiped my hands on my jeans. Didn't think too much of it at the time. Maybe a dumb prank. An hour later, there was another knock. Slower this time. 3 knocks. I went to the door, didn't open it. Just looked through the peephole. Nothing. 5 minutes passed. 3 more knocks. This time sharper, like someone using their knuckles hard and flat against the wood. I turned off every light, closed all the curtains, and sat in the dark with my phone in hand, screen dimmed. The living room window looks out onto the porch, so I peeked through a gap in the blinds. There wasn't anyone out there, but something wasn't right. The porch railing cast these long, spindly shadows onto the boards. Except one of them didn't make sense. It was taller than the others, too vertical, too still, like someone was standing just out of view. I didn't sleep that night. The knocking kept going, off and on, until just after 4. Then silence. When the sun came up, I went to the trash bin behind the shed. The gourd was gone. I know it sounds like maybe an animal dragged it off. That's what I told myself. But nothing else in the bin had been touched. Just the gourd, not a piece of it left behind. Later that morning, I went downstairs again, knocked on the Crawford's door. This time, Fern answered. Her eyes didn't quite meet mine. They stayed just over my shoulder like she was watching something behind me. I asked cautiously if they'd maybe left something on my porch. Her answer, "You should be careful what you discard," she said. "The house doesn't like waste." Then she closed the door, just like that. That was the first night I couldn't bring myself to sleep in my bedroom. I kept hearing things under the floor. Not the slow dragging anymore. Something lighter, quicker, like movement, pacing. At one point, lying awake, I felt the floorboards under my bed shift. Just slightly. Like something had passed beneath me. I dragged my mattress into the kitchen that night and stayed there until morning. Next day, I called the property manager. Asked her if anyone had ever mentioned weird behavior from the tenants below. There was a long pause. "You mean the Crawfords?" she asked. "Yeah," she hesitated. "There haven't been tenants in that unit for about 2 years." I froze. "I've been hearing them, talking to them. I live above them." That's not possible. The last people who stayed there moved out after reporting." She stopped herself. Never mind. I'll swing by next week and take a look. I didn't wait for that. I walked outside and looked straight at their porch. 7 gourds, same as before, but one of them now had a new slit, right down the center. Their front door was locked. No answer when I knocked. That night I heard something different, not beneath me. Above, pacing. Slow, methodical steps in the attic. I didn't go up there. Just stayed in the kitchen again, blanket around my shoulders, every light on. When the sun came up, it was November 1st. Porch was empty, no gourds. Their car was gone. Windows were shut tight. No movement inside. Around the side of the house, tucked under a crawl of ivy, I noticed something I hadn't seen before, a basement door. Old, wood swollen from rain, rusted padlock. I called the sheriff, said I was hearing strange noises, told them I was worried something illegal might be happening. A deputy came out later that afternoon. Guy in his 50s, didn't say much. When I mentioned the Crawfords, he gave me this tight look and said, "They're still there?" I nodded. He asked to look around. Walked through my place slowly, tapping the floorboards with his knuckles, but didn't find anything. I moved out the next morning before sunrise. I'm 28 years old, and I still can't hear the word Halloween without thinking about that weekend in Moonridge. My cousin Brad was the kind of guy who always had a new plan, usually the kind that started with, "It'll be fun, trust me." That's what he said when he invited me to a Halloween party way up in the Appalachian Hills. Some tiny place called Moonridge. I'd never heard of it, and honestly, that should have been my first clue. But he promised bonfires, live music, and a crowd of his old college friends camping out in the woods. I'd been working non-stop and figured a weekend of beer and bad decisions sounded like the perfect reset. The drive out there was long and winding, the kind of mountain road where your GPS gives up halfway and you just keep hoping you're still heading in the right direction. I lost signal about 20 minutes before I finally saw the cabin lights. There were maybe 20 or 30 people already there, music echoing faintly off the trees, the smell of smoke and cider hanging in the air. It felt familiar, like every other late-night college bonfire I'd been to, but there was something slightly off. Not creepy exactly, just unorganized, like no one was really in charge. They'd set up in a clearing behind an old hunting cabin, half the group in tents and half planning to sleep in their cars. The trees around the clearing were strung with glow sticks and cheap orange lights, and someone had carved jack-o'-lanterns into random shapes. Some smiling, some with weirdly neutral faces, one with no mouth at all. There was a big pot over the fire that smelled like cider spiked with every type of alcohol available. I spotted a few familiar faces from back when Brad and I went to the same college, but most people were locals, friends of friends, and a few who looked like they might have just wandered in. Everyone was friendly, though. A couple people wore half-hearted costumes. Someone had on a wolf mask, another was a scarecrow with a real burlap sack over their head. Others were in regular jackets and jeans. The mix made it hard to tell who belonged there and who didn't. As the night went on, the music got louder, the fire burned lower, and the conversation started looping in that drunk, repetitive way. Around midnight, Brad's friend Lena announced she wanted to show us something cool. She was this tall, sharp-eyed girl with a flashlight and too much confidence. She told us there was an old ghost path nearby, some trail that locals said disappeared if you followed it too far after midnight. I thought she was joking. But a handful of us were just drunk enough to go along, me, Brad, Lena, and 2 guys whose names I never caught. The trail started behind the cabin and cut into the trees. It wasn't wide, just a faint dirt path, and the deeper we went, the quieter everything got. Even the music faded until it was only the crunch of our boots and the beam of Lena's flashlight bobbing ahead. We found the first mask, maybe 10 minutes in. It hung from a low branch, carved from wood, about the size of a human face. The features were rough, no color, just gouged eyes and a slit for a mouth. The kind of thing someone might whittle out of boredom if they were living too long in the woods. I figured someone from the party had hung it there earlier as a joke, but Lena stopped walking. "That wasn't here last year," she said quietly. A few steps farther, we saw another, then another. They got bigger and stranger as we walked. Longer noses, exaggerated mouths, one painted red around the eyes. One had small deer antlers attached. Another had what looked like real human hair nailed into the top. The flashlight flickered once, twice, and then went out completely. None of us said anything for a full minute. The moonlight was enough to see each other's faces, but the woods felt heavier somehow, like the air had thickened. Brad tried to break the silence. "Okay," he said, laughing a little too hard. "That's enough." "You win, Lena. Creepy as hell." But Lena wasn't laughing. She was staring behind me, her expression completely blank. I turned, and that's when I saw it. A figure crouched beside a tree, half hidden in the brush. At first I thought it was someone from the party wearing one of those masks. It had a tattered flannel shirt, sleeves ripped, head bent low. I called out, "Hey, you're really committing to the bit, huh?" It didn't answer. It stood up too fast and started walking toward us. Not running, just walking. Straight line, steady pace. Its arms hung loose, but the way it moved felt wrong, like it didn't have to think about it. Brad muttered something under his breath, and we all turned at once. Nobody said run, but we did anyway. The woods blurred. I tripped going downhill, slammed my shoulder against a rock, and rolled until I hit a patch of wet leaves. When I stood up, everyone was gone. I couldn't even hear footsteps, just wind pushing through the trees. I called for Brad, then for Lena. No answer. I turned in circles, trying to remember which way we'd come, but the masks were gone. So was the path. The trees looked all the same, too close, too tall. My shoulder was throbbing, and every shadow looked like someone standing still. I just picked a direction and started walking, hoping to hit the clearing again. When I finally stumbled out 2 hours later, the party was still going. Same music, same fire. Nobody noticed I was gone. I must have looked insane, mud everywhere, my sleeve torn, blood on my hand. But when I asked about Brad and Lena, people just shrugged. One guy said, "They probably went into town for beer." I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my car with the doors locked, staring at the cabin, waiting for someone to come back. Nobody did. In the morning, a few people offered to help me look. We found the trail easily enough in daylight, but there were no masks, not a single one. The path just went straight for a while before ending at a barbed wire fence. On the other side was nothing but thick brush and empty space. I'd taken the whole Halloween week off work and decided I wanted to get out into the woods for a while. Just me, no phone, no emails, no one needing anything. I'd been feeling strung out, burnt at both ends, and the idea of hiking into somewhere remote with nothing but a tarp, some basic supplies, and no signal sounded like the best kind of reset. There's this patch in eastern Kentucky I'd read about in an old hiking forum. Mostly forgotten trails from the 1930s, barely maintained. No real maps, nothing formal. Just a name someone had scrawled in a comment thread, Stone Hollow Loop. Apparently, there used to be a mining camp near it that shut down mid-century. No markers, no permit system, and supposedly zero cell reception. That's what sold me. I drove out there the Monday before Halloween. It was all narrow, two-lane roads and washed-out gravel by the time I got close. Parked on a gravel shoulder that barely passed for legal, maybe half a mile from this rusted gate wrapped in chain. No signs, no fencing, just forest creeping right up to the road like it wanted to swallow it. I tossed on my pack and headed in. Past the gate, the trail was really more of a suggestion. You could see where old tire ruts had once been, but nature had mostly reclaimed it. I followed the ridgeline for about 2 miles before I found a decent place to set up. Small rise above a dry creek bed, flat enough to sleep and tucked back enough to feel sheltered. Dropped my gear, strung up the tarp, got a small fire going. It was still light, so I figured I'd do a bit of exploring before sunset. I followed what looked like a game trail that forked downhill. Nothing special at first, just more trees, more brush. But about 2 miles in, I noticed something strange through the trees. Off to the left, strung between 3 thin trees, were little white flags. Looked like torn fabric squares, each one fluttering gently in a triangle shape. Beyond them was a clearing. In that clearing, someone had arranged stumps into a few concentric circles. All clean cuts too, evenly spaced. It didn't look like a fire pit. No scorch marks, no gear, no litter. Just quiet. I stood there watching for a while. Nothing moved. I didn't hear anything. No voices, no tools, not even birds. Eventually, I backed away and cut around the spot, keeping my distance. The sun was just touching the ridge when I made it back to camp. I was trying to convince myself it wasn't that strange. Maybe some kind of Forest Service thing, maybe research or old training grounds. But something about it felt off, too neat, too deliberate. Then, just as I was setting up to cook, I heard something that made me freeze. Voices, not talking, chanting. Low and slow in a rhythm that didn't make any sense. It wasn't in time, not really. Some voices overlapped, some stuttered behind the rest. It sounded like a group trying to stay in sync and failing badly. The sound drifted in from the direction of those flags, but I couldn't tell how far. I dropped down behind a fallen log and just listened. After a few minutes, it faded out. No footsteps, no wrestling, just gone. I didn't sleep much that night. Every little sound felt closer than it was. I kept my knife beside my sleeping bag and told myself it was probably just locals doing something weird for Halloween. Maybe reenactors, maybe some kind of folklore club. But the thing is, there were no signs of people, no cars, no signage, no trail markers, and no way anyone was hauling stumps and flags all the way in here just for kicks. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I was heading out. But when I walked down to the creek bed to fill my bottle, I saw something right beside where I'd cooked dinner. 3 flat stones, maybe palm-sized, arranged in a spiral. Between them, fine white ash in a perfect line connecting each one. It wasn't there the night before. I'd have stepped right on it. There were no footprints. Not even mine showed up much in the dry leaves, and nothing else disturbed the area. Just those stones, that ash, and a weird silence that felt like it had weight. I packed fast, skipped breakfast, left the tarp strung up just so I didn't have to step any closer to the spiral. I didn't want to go back the same way and risk passing the flags again, so I tried a new route, cutting through brush and staying high along the ridge. But I must have zigzagged too wide because I came into a clearing I hadn't seen before. It was different from the rest of the forest. The ground was bare. No sticks, no deadfall, no underbrush. Just packed dirt like someone had swept it clear. It felt prepared. In the middle of it stood a wooden structure, about the size of a shed, made from logs that still had their bark, bound at the corners with thick vines. No windows. One door. No lock. All around it were more of those feather bundles. Brown and gray feathers tied with twine to short sticks, planted upright in the dirt like some kind of marker. Some were old and weathered. Others looked fresh. I didn't go near it. Just stood there long enough to take it in, then turned and got out of there. When I finally made it back to the road, I saw the empty patch where my car had been. I stood there for maybe a full minute, just staring. At first, I thought I was turned around, like maybe I'd come out on a different section of the road. But the tracks were there. My boot prints, the grass I'd stepped on yesterday, even the slight indentation from where the back tire had sunk a little. Everything matched except the car. I walked a few hundred yards in both directions. Nothing, no one, no other cars, just silence. That's when I heard it again, off to the left, a clicking sound, soft and rhythmic, like bone on bone, or maybe 2 dry sticks knocking together. Not natural, too even. It came from the trees, but I didn't look. I just kept walking. It followed for a bit. I could feel it more than hear it, like something just watching from behind the brush. Then, just like before, it stopped. About an hour later, I spotted something through the trees. A building, an old cabin tucked far enough back that you'd never see it from the road. It looked abandoned, but not wrecked. Shutters closed, roof intact. I cut toward it, hoping for a phone, a radio, maybe even just a place to wait. I knocked. Nothing. Tried the door. It opened. Inside, it looked like someone had been living there, but not recently. There were shelves with canned goods, Cloudy jars of what looked like pickled roots or mushrooms, and piles of folded linens that smelled faintly musty. No personal stuff, no photos, no notes, no clutter, just a lived-in shell. Above the fireplace was a symbol carved into a wooden disc, a spiral intersected with a jagged cross. I didn't even need to think about it. It was the same pattern I'd seen in the ash spiral back at my camp. There was a battery-powered radio on the counter. I tried it. Static. Switched bands. More static. I checked the dial against every station I could remember. Nothing. I stayed until dusk. Tried not to move much. Just sat on a stool, listening. Then I heard the chanting again. It started low, maybe 50 feet off. No words. Just that same stuttering rhythm. No light. No movement. Just a wall of sound. I killed the lantern. The footsteps came next. Dry leaves crunching. Slow and methodical. I couldn't tell how many people were out there, but it wasn't just one. They circled the cabin once, then again, and then it stopped. I heard the doorknob turn, just once. Not pushed, not rattled, just a slow turn, like someone checking if it was locked. I hadn't locked it. I'd forgotten. I sat there in the dark holding a hunting knife with both hands, my back against the far wall. I didn't move. Didn't even breathe fully. No one came in. No one knocked. Just silence. When I finally opened the door fast and hard, there was no one outside. But on the ground in front of the door was my car key, balanced upright in a neat little pile of ash. I didn't pack, didn't grab anything, just ran. I followed the road for hours, in the dark, with nothing but moonlight and my own heartbeat pushing me forward. My socks were soaked through from creek crossings. My feet were shredded. Eventually, I saw headlights. A county truck pulled up. The guy inside, he was a ranger, looked at me like he'd seen a ghost. I told him my car had been stolen. He called it in. A few hours later, they found it sitting in front of a ranger station 20 miles north. Engine cold. Doors locked. Nothing touched. Wallet, bag, phone all still inside. Except in the back seat, someone had left a bundle of feathers, bound with twine. I didn't report anything else. Just said I got lost, maybe confused. I haven't camped alone since, and I don't go anywhere near those woods anymore. It started on a Saturday weekend before Halloween. There was a party at Trent's uncle's barn, way out past Devil's Hollow. If you've ever driven out there, you know it's not really a road after a certain point. The pavement just kind of gives up, and the gravel barely pretends to be a path. You take a wrong turn out there, you're in the woods for good. We were 16, that weird age where you're too old to knock on doors for candy, too young to hit the bars, and just the right amount of dumb to think bonfires and forgotten barns sound like a great idea. Word about the party spread fast. Trent's uncle was out of town for a week, and apparently the barn already had string lights and half a sound system set up from some wedding months back. Had a Bluetooth speaker and some cheap beer, and boom, instant Halloween bash. I got there with my cousin Willa around 8. She'd been living with us since the summer, after her mom checked herself into rehab in Knoxville. Willa was just a year older, but she always felt like she was 5 steps ahead of the rest of us. She had bleached hair that never quite settled on a color, a silver lip ring she'd poked through herself, and that kind of unbothered confidence that made guys fall over themselves trying to look cool around her. That night, she showed up in this ripped red thrift store dress with fake vampire fangs that didn't fit right and boots that made her 2 inches taller than me. She looked ridiculous and cool at the same time. Me? I didn't dress up. Just jeans, hoodie, and my job of unofficial Willa watcher for the night. The barn itself was massive, one of those Appalachian relics with weird lean toes and second-floor half-lofts that don't go anywhere. You could tell it had been patched and repatched over the years. New pine boards nailed directly over rotted ones, some sections that looked like they'd been added sideways. From outside, light leaked out through the slats, giving the woods a kind of flickering heartbeat. You could hear the music and feel the bass before you even parked. Kids were everywhere. Leaning against dusty trucks, climbing on hay bales, slipping off into the trees with people they barely knew. There was a fire pit going full blast near the edge of the clearing, with a bunch of folding chairs scattered around it and someone's Bluetooth speaker fighting to play over the wind. The vibe was good, actually. Chaotic in the way only teenage parties can be, but good. For the first hour or so, Willa vanished into the crowd. I figured she'd be fine, she always was. I leaned against the wall, sipped a Coke someone had dropped in a cooler, and watched things unfold. That's when I overheard the story. A junior named Casey guy with braces he never smiled with was passing a beer to a friend and nodding toward the far end of the barn. "You know Trent's uncle found something under there, right?" he said, pointing to a part of the wall where the boards didn't quite meet. "Last spring," said, "there's a pit under the floor. Like a real one. No bottom, just a hole that eats light." Everyone kind of half laughed, the way people do when they're waiting to see if the punchline's coming or if this is going somewhere weird. "He said it was full of bones," Casey added. "Not buried, just laid out in rows. Animal bones, probably. But not scattered. Arranged." Nobody laughed that time. I pretended not to be listening, but I definitely was. The way Casey said it, it didn't sound like he believed it exactly. Just that he didn't know how to not say it. Willa found me again around 9. She was dragging a guy with her, a college dude in a denim jacket, clearly too old to be hanging around high schoolers. He was already a little sloppy, smiling in that loose-jawed way drunk people do when they're trying to flirt and focus at the same time. Willa was laughing too loud, leaning into him like she didn't weigh anything. I tried to talk to her, pull her aside, ask what she was doing. She brushed me off without even breaking her smile. "I'm fine," she said, already turning back to the guy. I didn't want to cause a scene, so I stepped outside into the tree line behind the barn. The music got quieter almost immediately. I pulled out my phone, texted my dad to say everything was chill, then reached into my hoodie and found a cigarette Willa had left in there earlier. It was bent, but it lit. That's when I looked back at the barn and noticed something weird. The slats that had been glowing from inside the little gaps where the light was spilling through, they weren't there anymore. From the outside, the barn looked completely sealed up. Solid black wood, no light, no windows, no doors except the front. I frowned, took a lap around the whole building. Same thing. Every side looked solid. No breaks in the boards, no flickers of light. Just a sealed box sitting in the middle of nowhere. I circled back around front and went in again, but the party wasn't the same anymore. The lights inside had dimmed. The music had shifted, some old folk song with no lyrics, just slow, dragging notes. Most of the people were gone. No shouting, no clinking bottles, no one around the fire. Just emptiness. I stepped inside and called Willa's name. No answer. I walked deeper. The main hall felt longer than before, like someone had stretched it. I checked one of the side rooms. A single wooden chair sat in the middle, like it had been placed there for someone. Another room had a plastic Halloween skeleton still hanging on the wall, but its chest had been carved into. Deep, uneven gouges. You don't get those from a box cutter. Not decoration, not for fun. In the back, I heard whispering. Not playful, not flirty, not someone's hiding to scare you kind of whispering. This was fast, overlapping, like multiple voices trying to say different things at once. I pushed open the door to the room where it came from, and nothing. Empty. But the whispering didn't stop. It was coming from the walls, not through them, from inside them. Then the music just stopped. No fade out, no click, just gone. Dead silence. I backed out. That's when I saw her, Willa. She was standing at the far end of the barn, half in shadow, still in that red dress. But she wasn't moving, not blinking. Her mouth was open, like she was mid-sentence, but no sound was coming out, not even breath. I stepped toward her. She turned and walked into the darkness. I followed. She rounded a corner. I followed again, but when I turned the corner, nothing. She was gone. That's when the lights went out completely. I froze, couldn't see my hands, couldn't even see where the door had been. I started walking, bumping into boxes and beams, feeling around until I found the front. It was open, but outside was pitch black too. No fire, no cars, no road, no moonlight. Like the barn was floating in a void. Panicking now, I turned and ran back inside, switched on my phone flashlight. The back wall, where it should have ended, didn't. A narrow hallway stretched farther than it should have been able to, sloped slightly down into the hillside. Like someone had dug into the rock and kept going. I followed it. At the very end, I found her. Willow was on the floor, curled up, shaking like she was freezing. Her makeup had smeared all down her cheeks. She looked up at me, eyes unfocused, and whispered, "He tried to take my eyes." I didn't ask who. I didn't wait. I just grabbed her hand, pulled her up, and we ran. We didn't stop until we hit the trees. And through the branches, we saw lights. The road was back. The fire was burning. People were laughing again. We walked up the hill like nothing had happened. Except, no one remembered seeing Willa leave. The guy she was with? Gone. No one remembered his name. No one missed him. No one reported him. When we got home 2 hours later, our back door was kicked in. TV, gone. Dad's hunting rifles, gone. The sheriff said it looked like a random break-in, but nothing else was touched. Except the hallway mirror. Someone had drawn 2 red circles over where our eyes would be. My dad put up cameras after that. Willa stopped going out. I started locking my bedroom door every night, even when I was home alone. My cousin Lucas talked me into going to this Halloween party way out past Granger Ridge, near a place called Pine Hollow. The property used to belong to the Mallow family, I think. Lucas said some guy who knew a guy was throwing the party, and honestly, I only went because I was already staying at our grandma's place that weekend, and he wouldn't shut up about it. It was about a 30-minute drive through the hills. Not much out there besides trees, rusted-out trailers, and gravel roads that don't show up on GPS. I kept asking him why anyone would throw a party that far out, and he just rolled his eyes and said, "It's Halloween, dude. This is where the best ones are." Which, sure, if best, means you might get murdered by a raccoon or stranded with no cell service. We hit the road around 9. It was colder than I expected, and the air had that damp, wood smoke kind of smell, like someone nearby was burning brush. Lucas kept messing with the heat, clicking it off and on every 2 minutes because it stank like burning dust and old leaves. I told him to knock it off, but we ended up arguing about it half the ride there. Felt like the kind of stupid backseat fight we used to have as kids, and I remember thinking, this is going to be one of those nights. We finally pulled up and parked in a field behind the barn, headlights catching these jack-o'-lanterns that were stuck on fence posts. One every 50 yards or so. Most of them were pretty simple triangles for eyes, crooked grins, but a couple had weird symbols carved into them. Not like runes or anything dramatic, just off. One looked like it had a keyhole for a mouth. Another had a spiral instead of eyes. I mentioned it to Lucas. He shrugged and said someone probably got creative. The barn itself was packed loud music, too many people. There was a makeshift DJ booth near the loft, and they had coolers everywhere, surrounded by fake cobwebs and dry ice that had mostly melted into this weird chemical-smelling puddle. The lights were string bulbs stapled along the rafters, and people were already dancing, drinking, climbing up into the hay. It smelled like sweat, damp wood, and cheap beer. I recognized a few faces from school, but most of the crowd looked older, early 30s probably. A couple of them had that not from around here vibe, like they were friends of friends who'd gotten dragged along. Nobody seemed to know who actually owned the place. There was just this handmade sign nailed to a tree by the driveway that said, "Do not go in the house," all caps, and next to it someone had hung up a fake skeleton that looked too clean to be plastic. I pointed it out. Lucas just grinned and said it was probably a joke. By midnight, people were jumping off the loft into the hay below. It was that kind of energy, loud, sloppy, a little aggressive. We stayed mostly because Lucas had started talking to this girl dressed like a nurse. She had one of those little plastic hats and fishnets, and I guess that was enough to anchor him for the night. I was about ready to leave when my phone glitched out. I looked down to send a text to Grandma, just a quick staying out late, heads up, and it froze mid-typing. Then the signal bars blinked and disappeared completely. No service. Not even the SOS only thing. Just nothing. I figured it was the hills normal out here. But then Lucas pulled out his phone to show the nurse girl something and his just died. 1 second it was fine, the next it was black screen. Wouldn't turn back on. Full battery too. He'd charged it in the car. We didn't really have time to say anything about it because right after that, the music cut out and the lights blinked off. All at once, total black. For a second it felt like everyone thought it was a prank. People laughed, someone yelled something about the generator. The only light came from a couple of those glow sticks and one guy who turned on his phone flashlight. Then the front barn doors slammed shut. I mean hard, like someone shoved them from the outside. You could feel the air shift. That changed the vibe real fast. Some guy near the back said, "Okay, not funny," and someone else laughed nervously, but no one owned up to it. There was this heavy pause where you could tell everyone was waiting for the music to come back on, waiting for someone to break the tension. And then we heard banging from upstairs, the hayloft. At first, it was just one thump, then another, heavy, uneven, like someone dragging something or stomping around. A girl screamed short, startled, and 2 guys ran up to check. Lucas started toward the ladder too, but I grabbed his sleeve. I don't know why, just had this gut feeling that going up there was a bad idea. About a minute later, one of the guys came back down, said there was no one up there, but one of the hay bales had been torn open, like with hands, just shredded. No one laughed at that. Someone cracked open a beer trying to act casual, but the whole mood had shifted. Lucas said he wanted to say goodbye to the nurse girl, and I told him I'd wait in the car. I figured worst case, I'd warm up and scroll through some photos or something. The barn just felt wrong, like we'd all overstayed our welcome. When I got to the car, I saw the glass, passenger side window, shattered, like someone had taken a rock or a tire ironed to it. I stood there, heart thudding, waiting to hear if anyone was still around. But the woods were dead silent. No wind, no insects, just cold. I opened the door and looked inside. The glove box was open, stuff scattered everywhere. Napkins, a few granola bars, some CDs, but nothing was missing. Not my wallet in the side door pocket, not Lucas's charger, not the old knife he kept clipped in the cup holder. Except one thing was gone, an envelope. Lucas had brought it from Grandma's. Just a few old family photos he was supposed to drop off with our great aunt. Nothing valuable, just faded pictures of people standing in yards or at kitchen tables, but they were gone. Lucas came back a few minutes later. He thought I was joking until he saw my face. We didn't talk, just got in and drove. We were maybe 10 minutes down the gravel road, not even back to the main stretch, when the headlights caught someone standing in the middle of the road. Dead center. Still. Lucas slowed down. The guy, or whatever it was, wore a long coat and this mask that looked like a pillowcase, not plastic. Just a sagging white shape with eye holes cut unevenly and something dark around the edges like soot or ash. I told Lucas not to stop. He didn't listen, just coasted forward like he couldn't help it. Maybe he thought it was a party thing, some guy playing scarecrow. We got within 10 feet and Lucas tapped the horn. The figure tilted its head. Not fast, slow, and stiff, like it was confused by the sound. Then it stepped off the road, still facing us. As we passed, it lifted one hand and slapped the back of the car. It echoed like a hammer hit the trunk. Lucas floored it. We didn't stop until we hit the main highway, and even then we didn't say anything. Not until we pulled into Grandma's driveway and saw the porch light. When we told her what happened, she didn't even blink. Just said, should have known better than to go up by the Mallow place on Halloween. Not after what happened back in '97. We asked what happened. She didn't answer. The next morning, Lucas was brushing dirt off the bumper when he saw it. In the dust, clear as anything, 3 words traced by a finger, "You brought him." We wiped it off and didn't talk about it again. The Halloween fair at Pine Hollow Church was one of those small-town things that never really changed. Every year, the same handmade signs went up along Route 37. Aunt Maureen had volunteered there for as long as I could remember, so by default, my cousin Lila and I were part of the unofficial setup crew. We'd spend the afternoon taping orange streamers to the basement ceiling and untangling strings of plastic bats someone had stuffed into a box the year before without wrapping. I don't think anyone ever really questioned why the church threw such a big Halloween event, especially since Pastor Ellsworth had this vague fire and brimstone vibe on Sundays. But I guess even he figured it was better to have the kids bobbing for apples under the eye of the church than getting into trouble somewhere else. That year, Halloween landed on a Friday, and the turnout was huge. I remember the whole place buzzing, parents milling around in half-hearted costumes, toddlers in pumpkin onesies, teenagers pretending not to enjoy themselves. Lila and I had manned the candy toss game for about 2 hours before we finally stepped away. My hand was sticky from unwrapping too many mini Tootsie Rolls. The pews had all been pushed back to the walls, and the choir platform was converted into a puppet stage with a sad-looking Dracula sock puppet that kept falling over. The air smelled like kettle corn, old wood, and a hint of those rubber Halloween masks that get sweaty the second you put them on. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt safe, familiar, even fun. I was chewing on a piece of stale licorice when Aunt Maureen suddenly came over to where we were standing near the coat racks. She looked like she was still in full costume. Green face paint, sparkly black cloak, fake warts and everything. But her expression had none of the usual playfulness. She leaned in and said something low to Lila, too quiet for me to hear, then crouched in front of me. "Stay in the basement," she said. Her voice was calm but firm in a way that made my stomach drop. "No matter what you hear, don't open the door for anyone unless I come myself." I blinked. "Wait, what? Why?" She didn't answer. Just stood up and gave Lila a look that clearly meant go now. That was enough. Lila grabbed my hand, pulled me down the back stairwell, and led me straight into the supply room tucked behind the boiler. It was a narrow little space with metal shelving units and mismatched boxes labeled with masking tape. There was one window, small and rectangular, too high to see out of, and half covered by cobwebs. Without a word, she turned off the light, grabbed the tall filing cabinet near the wall, and shoved it across the floor until it blocked the door. The legs squealed across the concrete, but Lila didn't flinch. She just sat down, legs crossed, and clicked on the flashlight she'd pulled from her hoodie pocket. I sat beside her, not saying anything. Lila was 3 years older than me and had always been the one to crack jokes or talk big. Seeing her quiet and tense made me feel colder than the basement air. She passed me the leftover candy bowl, which still had a bunch of those cheap chocolate bars and fruit chews no one really wanted. I unwrapped a chocolate just to give myself something to do. The sound of the wrapper crinkling echoed more than it should have. And then everything went quiet. No laughter, no music from the speakers upstairs. Just silence. After a minute or two, I asked, "Why are we down here?" She didn't answer. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. It felt like we'd been waiting there forever when we finally heard the lock on the basement door click shut. Not slam, just a soft, deliberate click. And then, nothing. The silence after that was different, heavier. I started counting seconds in my head just to have something to focus on. And then something upstairs shifted. There were footsteps, but not like before. No quick running or stomping. These were slow, careful. Just the occasional thud, like someone walking barefoot on wood, trying not to be heard. No voices, no laughter, just those quiet, deliberate steps. My whole body tensed. I could feel it in my arms, my legs, even the back of my jaw. Lila didn't move, just kept the flashlight angled at the floor between us. Then the footsteps reached the top of the basement stairs. Each footfall was too soft to be anyone in boots, but too heavy to be a kid. Just that strange middle ground where your brain keeps trying to make it fit someone normal, but can't. They stopped outside the supply room door. I didn't dare breathe. Then something pressed against the filing cabinet. Lightly, not enough to move it, just enough to make the metal creak. Then 3 knocks, not loud, not hard, but each one made the cabinet rattle just a bit. And then a calm voice. "You left the door open." That was it. 5 words. I didn't recognize it. It wasn't Maureen. It wasn't anyone I'd heard at the fair. And it wasn't a question. It was a statement. Like it knew we were in there. Like it had already been watching. Lila reached for my hand, and her grip was hard. Her fingers dug into my knuckles. I couldn't tell if I was shaking or she was. The thing or person or whatever it was didn't try to open the door. It just stood there, long enough that my legs started cramping from how I was sitting. And then, finally, it walked away. Back up the stairs. Same slow pace. Same rhythm. When the footsteps stopped, the silence came back. That same awful, pressing stillness. Neither of us said anything. We didn't move, just sat there waiting for something else to happen. An hour passed, maybe more. I couldn't check a clock. I just knew that every time I thought it was safe, I'd remember the way that voice had sounded, like it had been waiting for us to speak. Eventually, we heard the basement door unlock again, and this time, a knock. Lila stood up, pushed the filing cabinet aside slowly, and opened the door. Aunt Maureen stood there. Her face looked pale and worn out, like she hadn't slept in days. The green paint on her face had smeared down one cheek, and her witch hat was gone. "Come on," she said. "We're leaving. Don't say anything yet." We followed her upstairs. The church was empty. Decorations still hanging, candy still out, but the energy was gone. A few chairs were knocked over. One of the long folding tables near the punch bowl was broken clean down the middle. Nobody else was there, not one person. At home, after we locked every door and drew every curtain, Maureen finally sat us down in the kitchen and explained. "He came back," she said. I asked who. She hesitated, then said, "Someone who isn't supposed to be here." She told us he shows up every few years. Always on Halloween, always in the ridge. Nobody ever sees him arrive. He just gets in. Into buildings, into homes, into places where people are supposed to be safe. "He doesn't talk," she said, "unless there's a child listening." I asked what would have happened if we'd opened the door. She just looked at me. Didn't need to answer. After that, she never let us go back to the Halloween fair. We stayed home every October 31st, kept the lights on, pretended it was just another night. I was 22 when I moved into my mom's old family place, a sagging 2-story house planted in the middle of nowhere in Appalachia. I just finished college and didn't have a real plan yet. Moving into the house was mostly about saving money and buying time, at least until I figured out what was next. It was supposed to be temporary, a few months tops, maybe help out with upkeep, sort through some of the junk my grandparents left behind, get a breather before diving into whatever was supposed to come next. That first October, people around town started talking about the Firehouse Chili Cook-Off. It was apparently a big deal, the one real event in the area. Everyone went. Free food, bonfire, costume contest for the kids. A friend of my mom's even dropped off a flyer, hand-drawn in colored pencil and photocopied to death. I kept it on the fridge for a week and fully meant to go. Then I found the box. It was a few days before Halloween. I was out in the old woodshed, trying to make a dent in the chaos boxes of rusted tools, rotting lawn chairs, and a whole family of spiders that clearly resented the intrusion. Toward the back corner, I noticed a floorboard that wasn't nailed down like the others. I pried it up out of curiosity, half expecting to find mice or nothing at all. Instead, there was a box. Small, olive green, dented on one side like it had been dropped hard, military style. It looked like the kind of thing you'd find in a surplus store, but heavier. When I picked it up, something shifted inside. It made a dull, muted rattle like metal on paper. The lock was rusted and mostly cosmetic at that point. A few prods with a flathead screwdriver and it popped off with a dry snap. Inside were several black and white photographs, a couple hand-drawn maps on aging paper, and a bundle of thick envelopes tied together with fraying twine. Everything inside smelled faintly of mildew and time like old books sealed in a box too long. The photos caught my attention first. They were all the same place, a small clearing in the woods, centered around a jagged, sharp-looking stone about waist-high, kind of like a broken fang rising out of the earth. There were no people in the photos, no landmarks beyond that single stone, but every shot was taken from the exact same angle, always the same composition. The only difference was the years written on the back, October 31st, with different years spanning what looked like at least 40 years. Different handwriting, same spot, same time of year. The maps were rough sketches, clearly made by hand. Trails, ridgelines, a few marked points. One of the trails ended with a little X near the edge of our property, maybe a quarter-mile uphill. I should have just put everything back and walked away, but I didn't. That night, while most of the county was at the firehouse eating spicy chili and bobbing for apples, I laced up my boots, grabbed a flashlight, and headed into the woods behind the house. It was easy to find. The trail, though overgrown, was still traceable if you paid attention. Roots curled across the path like lazy snakes. After about 10 or 15 minutes of climbing and ducking under branches, I stepped into a clearing, just like the photos. Same angle even. And there it was, that jagged stone, exactly where it had always been, surrounded by a patch of bare earth. The air felt off. Not cold, just too still, like the trees were pausing, listening. Then I noticed the things scattered around the edges of the clearing. Nestled into the roots of the trees, small objects. A rusted key, a single glove, buttons, half of a toy car. And one item I still can't forget, a tiny, mud-caked baby shoe. I don't know why, but I suddenly felt like I shouldn't be there, like I'd walked in on something that wasn't done yet. I raised my phone, took a single picture, and turned to go back. Then I heard it. A voice, distant but clear, calm, flat. Get in your plane. I stopped. It wasn't loud, more like someone talking just far enough away that you couldn't pinpoint where they were. I turned around, scanned with the flashlight. Nothing, just trees, no footsteps, no movement. Again, get in your plane. Same tone, monotone, like someone reading instructions they didn't understand. There was no edge to it, no urgency. That's what made it worse. The thing is, it sounded familiar. Not the words, but the rhythm, the inflection. Like something I'd heard before, somewhere I couldn't place. I've never flown a plane in my life. Never even been in one without white-knuckling the armrest. Still, I practically jogged back down the trail. That night, I had a dream. I was inside an old cockpit. Green metal, scratched dials, switches that clicked when I touched them. Outside the window, the sky was the color of dried blood, deep red fading into black. Something was wrong. I could feel it. The engine sputtered, choking. I turned, my head, fuel was pouring out of the wing. I didn't know what I was doing, but my hands moved anyway, reaching, adjusting, flipping switches. The headset crackled, but no voice came through. Then I ditched. The water came up fast. The dream ended with me gasping underwater, trapped in the cockpit. I woke up choking. That was the first time. It came again the next Sunday, and the one after that. Each dream started closer to the crash. The sequence shortened. I stopped remembering the beginning and started waking up with the canopy pressing against my hands, screaming as cold water surged up my chest. And the next day, I'd hear it again. Always the same line, get in your plane. Different spots, different distance, but somewhere in the trees. I never told anyone. Who would I even tell? That Halloween, we were staying at my great-uncle's place in a town called Auburn Hollow, a small patch of nowhere up near the West Virginia line. His house was one of those old, low-slung places tucked against the bottom of a ridge, with woods so thick behind it you couldn't see past the first few rows of trees, even in daylight. Every fall, we'd come up for a few days. Me, my mom, my cousins, sometimes their parents too. It was tradition. Cold nights, hot cider, the occasional backyard bonfire. Pretty harmless stuff. But that year felt a little off before we even got there. Not for any big reason, just small things. My mom kept mentioning how she didn't sleep well in the house anymore. Said she always felt like she was forgetting something. The living room clock stopped working 3 times that week and somehow kept resetting itself to the exact same wrong time, 3:17. And when we pulled up to the driveway that Friday afternoon, the porch light was already on, even though no one had been home for 2 days. Stuff you can explain if you try hard enough. That night after dinner, Rob got that look in his eye. He always had ideas when we visited, harmless mischief most of the time, but this one was different. "There's cabins up there," he said casually, nodding toward the ridge. "Real old ones. Hunters used to use them in the 60s, maybe 70s. Haven't been touched in decades." His sister June rolled her eyes. "You said that last year." "Yeah, but I found one," he said, "a couple weeks ago. There's more too." I didn't go far. Of course, he didn't tell anyone about it until the exact moment it got dark. It was about 7 when we headed out. The moon was up and almost full, casting enough light to make out shapes in the woods, but not enough to feel comfortable. The trail started behind the shed, just a narrow break in the undergrowth you'd never notice unless you were looking for it. Rob had his phone flashlight on, but the beam was more glare than help. June walked behind him, arms crossed, and I followed last, keeping my hood up against the wind. We didn't talk much, just boots scraping over roots and the dry rustle of leaves brushing our legs. The air was cold enough to sting a little, but not freezing. The trail curved uphill and narrowed, and about 20 minutes in, we ducked under a sagging barbed wire fence. Looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. The barbs were red with rust and bent in all directions, like the fence gave up trying to hold anything out. Once we were past it, the trees started to space out. Rob stopped and pointed ahead. "There," he said. "See that roof line?" It was barely visible through the trees, just a sagging peak of wood tucked into the brush. When we got closer, I could see that the cabin was small and low to the ground, maybe 1 room total. The porch was a wreck. The railing had collapsed, and the boards creaked under our weight when we stepped up. June pushed open the door, or what was left of it. It was lying against the wall, almost like someone had removed it and propped it there on purpose. Inside, the place was dusty and stale, the kind of smell that sits on your tongue. The walls were stained with water lines, and the floor was covered in dirt and old paper. I could see part of a rotted chair in the corner and what might have been a wood stove, long since rusted through. We poked around a bit, then spotted another structure behind it, smaller, partially hidden by a collapsed tree. It barely looked like a cabin anymore, just a box of wood with a gaping hole in the roof and weeds crawling through the doorframe. Rob stayed by the first one while June and I made our way to the second. She crouched by the doorway and tilted her head. "There's clothes in here," she said, low and flat. I stepped next to her and looked. On the far side of the room, bunched up against the corner, was a flannel shirt rotted and clinging to itself in folds. Nearby was a single child sneaker, not muddy, not shredded, just sitting there. I didn't see anything else that looked personal. No blankets, no bags, just sticks, dead leaves, a couple long springs sticking out of what might have been a mattress a lifetime ago. Then Rob's voice floated down to us. "Hey, there's a third one down here." We climbed a steep incline behind the first 2 and saw it. It was different, newer, somehow. No rot, no moss. The wood looked solid, the door was shut clean, and the windows had glass that wasn't cracked. The porch didn't sag, and there was no trash anywhere around it. It felt wrong. June stopped dead in her tracks. "I don't like that one," she said. Not scared, just sure. Rob kept walking. He gave us this grin like we were being dramatic. "Come on," he said. "You're acting like it's haunted." He stepped up, turned the knob, and pushed open the door. The inside was pure black. Not dim, just black, like someone had painted over the air. He walked in. We waited. A beat passed, then another. I thought I'd hear him walking, maybe muttering about how empty it was. But there was nothing. No creaking, no shifting, just silence. "Rob?" I called, no answer. June moved closer to me, but didn't say anything. I walked to the door frame and leaned in, just enough to call again. Rob. My voice didn't echo. It felt cut off, like the air in there was thicker. Then there was a knock. Behind us. We both spun around. Nobody. Just trees. A few skinny trunks and brush. Then another knock, softer but closer from our left. Not on a tree. On something flat. But there was nothing flat out there. I backed up. Okay, Rob. Enough. Then he walked out. He looked exactly the same. No dirt, no scratches. Calm, but off. His eyes didn't meet mine or June's. They stared past us like he was watching something behind us, or still thinking about whatever he saw inside. "What's wrong with you?" June asked, her voice tight. He blinked. Nothing. I reached out. His jacket was cold, colder than the air around us. It made my hand pull back without thinking. "You heading back?" he asked. I said, "Yeah." He nodded, but he didn't move. We left him standing there. At the first cabin, I looked back up the hill. He was gone. We waited. 5 minutes, then 10. He never came down. June wanted to go back up, but something in me said no. Not because I was scared, because it felt like if we went back, we wouldn't come down either. We told my uncle. He grabbed his flashlight and went up alone. When he came back, he said the cabins were empty, all 2 of them. I asked him if he saw the third one, described it exactly. He stared at me for a second, then shook his head. "There's no third cabin up there. Never has been." Rob walked in the next morning, just wandered into the kitchen like he'd gone out for air. Same clothes, same boots, same boots. No scratches, no dirt. My uncle asked where he went. He shrugged. Back up the trail. "Thought you guys left." He didn't remember going inside anything but the first cabin. Said it was just junk and old chairs. Thought we went home early. Later that night, I checked my phone, just for something to do. There was a photo in my gallery I didn't remember taking. Black at first, but something was in the center. I brightened it. The third cabin, door wide open. Rob standing inside. Behind him, near the back wall, something else. Another figure, same height, same clothes. I deleted the photo, not out of panic, just a quiet decision, like I'd cleaned up after something that shouldn't have happened. It started out like one of those last-minute plans that sounds fun in a group chat but feels less smart once you're actually doing it. The town had its usual haunted hayride and discount bin costumes, but my friend Mira found something online that seemed way more interesting. She said there were some abandoned hunting cabins way out in the woods past Briar Ridge. 4 of us decided to go: Mira, her boyfriend Theo, this girl Jess who was visiting from Asheville for the weekend, and me. I grew up maybe 20 minutes from that patch of forest and had never even heard of those cabins, which honestly made me want to see them more. We packed flashlights, a thermos of cider, one of those old Polaroid cameras. No costumes. The whole plan was to hike in before dark, explore a bit, grab a few creepy photos, and hike back out before it got too cold. We left the car on the side of a gravel pull-off and started walking along what looked like an old fire access trail. Took longer than we thought, almost 2 hours winding up and down hills. But Mira's directions were weirdly accurate, and right before dusk we found this clearing. 3 cabins, all in a line, facing what used to be a fire pit. They looked like they were just dropped there and then forgotten. The wood was bloated and soft in places, but they were still standing. The middle one had a door hanging sideways off the hinges, and all the windows were just empty frames. Naturally, that's the one we went into first. The inside smelled like wet wood and something sharp, like mildew mixed with pine sap. One table with a busted leg, a cracked old lantern, a few piles of what looked like squirrel nests in the corners. Pretty standard abandoned cabin stuff. Mira was already snapping pictures. Theo was goofing off, rattling a shelf behind Jess to freak her out. I hung close to the door because the floor gave under your feet like it was hiding a swamp underneath. Then Theo found this notebook. It was wedged into a gap in the wall near the back, water damaged, but still mostly intact. The first part looked like a hunting log: dates, weather notes, a few names. Pretty boring. Then halfway through, the handwriting started slanting, and things got Off. The dates stopped making sense. One said Oct 20 of 1990, the next one just said, still night. After that, it was mostly short phrases, random words, a few pages of symbols, and then just scratch marks, like someone dragging the tip of a knife across the paper again and again. Theo laughed and chucked it onto the table like he was done with the spooky part of the evening. Right then, we all heard something move. Not footsteps. More like a slow shifting weight, like something heavy adjusting on a sagging floorboard. It came from one of the other cabins. Jess whispered something about a raccoon. Theo nodded like, yeah, sure, probably a raccoon. But no one moved. We just stood there, ears straining, waiting. After a minute, it stopped. We forced a few laughs and moved on to the second cabin. This one had bunk beds and some old coat hooks along the wall. But the air inside was different. Not colder like the temperature dropped, colder like something ignored the air around it. The windows were boarded up, but light still felt like it didn't want to go in. Mira crouched next to one of the bunks and pointed out a pair of gloves stuck underneath. They were small, like child-sized, dark with mold or something worse. She picked them up, but only for a second, dropped them like they burned. No one said anything, but we were all thinking the same thing. The fun was gone. Something about this place had turned. We figured we'd check the last cabin and then head back. It was locked up with an old padlock, rusted but still clinging to the hasp. Jess gave the door one solid kick, and the whole frame just shuddered. It didn't budge. That felt like a sign, so we turned around. Except the trail was gone. Not faded, not hard to see. Gone. The hillside behind the cabins didn't look like the one we came down. The ridgeline had vanished. The trees looked packed tighter than before, like they'd grown closer while we weren't watching. We walked the edge of the clearing twice. Nothing looked familiar. Theo pulled out his phone, no signal. Same with mine. I said we should wait for the moon and try to retrace our steps by the light. Jess started getting worked up, fast talking, saying we shouldn't have taken the notebook. She wanted to put it back. Mira was already on it. She walked back into the first cabin, holding the notebook with both hands like it might fall apart. I followed her in. She slid it back into the wall, exactly where it had come from. Right then, we heard a long creak, like something heavy slowly shifting its weight. Then a dull thud. Outside, Theo and Jess were frozen, staring at the third cabin, the locked one. The padlock was lying in the grass. The door was open maybe an inch. We hadn't touched it. None of us had even gone near it since Jess tried to kick it. We all just stared. Then the tapping started. From inside the third cabin, something began to tap against the door frame. Not a knock. Not like a hand. It sounded sharp, like bones or claws or maybe even nails. 3 quick taps, then one slow. Then silence. Then the pattern again. Same rhythm. Same pause. Jess was gone before I even realized she'd moved. Took off into the trees like her body made the decision before her brain could catch up. Theo shouted after her and went running. That left Mira and me, just standing there. Neither of us said a word. The tapping kept going. Then it stopped. And from the woods, Jess screamed. One sharp sound. Then nothing. I called her name, but it came back weird. Distorted. Like someone had stretched it out and played it backward. Mira grabbed my arm. Her voice was flat when she said she saw something past the cabins, behind the trees. Said it looked human, but wasn't. We just ran. Not toward a trail, just away. Away from the third cabin, from that sound, from whatever had opened that locked door. We crashed through underbrush, snapped branches, slipped down slopes. Mira tripped and slid down a steep patch of dirt. I followed, landed hard next to her, and suddenly we were on a dirt road. Not the one we came in on, but it was a road, and it was real, and we followed it until it hit pavement. A pickup truck passed around midnight. They stopped, thank God. Took us to a gas station 10 miles out. We filed a missing person report for Jess. Search teams went out for about a week. Dogs, drones, even helicopters. Nothing. It just swallowed her. No one talks about those cabins anymore. This year, I stayed home for Halloween. No pumpkins, No porch lights, nothing. I didn't even hand out candy. This happened a couple years ago during a solo road trip I took through the Appalachians. I'd been working way too many hours that fall, barely seeing daylight between my shifts in my apartment. One morning, I just decided I needed out, real out, so I grabbed my gear, loaded up the car, and pointed it east. I didn't have much of a plan beyond hike, sleep, repeat. It was early October, that stretch when the weather still holds out but you can feel the cold creeping in at night. I figured the trails would be quieter, the campsites emptier, and the whole trip a little easier to navigate without summer crowds. I wasn't wrong. But quiet doesn't always mean peaceful. Somewhere around day 4, I veered off my original route after finding a random comment in this old hiking forum. Someone mentioned an overlook near a place called Braden Hollow, said it had the kind of view that made you stop talking. There wasn't much detail, just a vague direction and a trail name I didn't recognize. That sort of thing always pulls me in, so I rerouted through. Braden Hollow turned out to be the kind of town you only notice when you've already passed it. There was one gas station, one boarded-up diner, and what looked like the remnants of a hardware store. I stopped to top off the tank and stretch my legs. The gas pump was ancient and didn't take cards, so I went inside to pay. The guy behind the counter looked like he'd been thawed out of a long nap. Barely glanced at me. While I was paying, I asked if there were any decent places to set up camp around there. He kind of grunted, scratched the back of his neck, then said something like, "There's an old forest road, used to be state maintained. About 6, maybe 7 miles out. Not much traffic out there. Good spot if you want quiet." Sounded like a win to me. I scribbled down the directions and hit the road. It got rough almost immediately. The road wasn't so much a road as a deeply scarred path through thick woods. Trees leaned close from both sides, and the gravel gave way to hard dirt full of ruts and overgrown edges. The kind of place where cell service vanishes before you even realize it. At one point, I passed a truck parked just off the shoulder. Faded blue, a layer of dust coating the windshield. It was angled weird, like someone had pulled in quick and never left. I slowed down just enough to see that it was empty. No movement inside, no gear around it, just parked. About 15 minutes deeper in, the trees opened up into this wide clearing. Big enough to park, flat enough to set up camp, and right on the edge of a bluff. I couldn't even describe the view properly. You could see ridge lines stacking into the distance, like waves of dark green and ash blue rolling into each other. I stood there a while, just looking. Eventually, I pitched my tent near the tree line, made a quick dinner out of jerky and trail mix, and settled in with the paperback I'd been trying to finish for months. By the time dusk settled in, I hadn't seen or heard a single other person. That changed when I heard the knock. It was sharp, 2 quick raps, like knuckles on wood. I looked up fast, thinking maybe someone had pulled in without me noticing. But there was no car, no footsteps, just woods behind me. I stood up, called out something like, "Hey, you okay?" No response. The trees back there were dense pine, and the undergrowth had that wiry, tangled look that makes even a small animal hard to spot. I walked toward the sound, sweeping my flashlight side to side, trying not to convince myself I was being paranoid. Nothing moved, not even a squirrel or the rustle of leaves, just dead still. I waited another minute, then went back to the fire. That's when I saw the car door. It was cracked open, driver's side, not wide, just enough that the interior light had kicked on. I hadn't touched it since parking. My backpack, which I'd left on the passenger seat, looked shifted, not rummaged through, more like someone had moved it slightly, enough to make me notice. The hair on the back of my neck went stiff. I checked the trunk, the ground around the tent, looked for footprints or anything off. But the dirt was too dry and packed to hold a clear print. Nothing looked taken, nothing damaged. And then I saw it. On the hood of my car was a white ceramic coffee mug, plain, no design, sitting perfectly centered. I don't drink coffee. I don't even own a mug like that. For some reason, I picked it up without thinking, and it was warm, like someone had just finished whatever was in it. I froze, holding it, every inch of me suddenly on edge. I turned slowly, scanning the trees again. I hadn't heard anyone approach. No car, no footsteps, no twig snapping, just this mug. I placed it on the ground and got in the car, locking the doors. The tent could stay. My gear could stay. I didn't care. I sat there, lights off, engine off, trying to hear anything. At some point, I don't know when, I must have nodded off. My head jerked upright when I heard the tapping. Not knocking this time, lighter, rhythmic, fingernails on glass. I turned slowly toward the passenger window and saw her. A woman, pale face, short brown hair. She looked about mid-30s, maybe older. Her eyes weren't focused on me, more like she was staring through me or past me. Her mouth was slightly open, and she just stood there, tapping with one finger. No expression, no urgency. I cracked the window a few inches, asked if she needed help. She didn't answer at first, just blinked slowly, then said, "He's in the woods, I left him there." I asked who. She didn't look at me, just stared down and mumbled, "I can't go back. You shouldn't be here." Then she turned and walked into the trees. No flashlight, no gear, nothing on her at all. Just vanished into the darkness like she knew exactly where she was going. I waited, stunned. Then I called out to her, quietly at first, then louder, shined my flashlight in the direction she'd gone. There was nothing, not a sound. Not a sound, not a shadow. I didn't follow. I turned on the car, backed out of that clearing as fast as I could without blowing a tire, and left the tent and everything else behind. At the bottom of the forest road, I saw the blue truck again. Only this time, there was a fire going near it. It was small and low, but definitely burning. Right beside it, a single camping chair, and in the chair, something or someone was sitting. I slowed the car, leaning slightly to see through the windshield. Balanced on the armrest was the same white coffee mug. I floored it. Didn't stop driving until I reached a bigger town with lights, people, and cell service. Parked in front of a 24-hour diner and just sat there for a while, heart still pounding. Eventually, I called the ranger station and told them what I'd seen. Gave them the directions, told them about the woman, even mentioned the truck. They said they'd check it out, but didn't find anything. I was 29 when my cousin Mason and I decided to take a fall road trip through eastern Tennessee. Just two guys looking to escape the grind for a few days. He quit his warehouse-side job outside Cincinnati, and I was winding down a freelance contract that drained more brain power than payment. So when cheap beer and leftovers piled up and nothing called our names, we said, let's drive. No destination, really. By the fifth day, we were done with the usual pit stops. Eggs that tasted like cardboard, gas station peanuts, stale sodas. We wanted something else, something normal, something familiar. Then we saw it, a crooked wooden arrow nailed to a leaning fancy post that read, Claybrook 7 miles. No flashing marquee, no chain restaurant sign. Just that arrow, handwritten, pointing into the woods. We looked at each other and shrugged. Let's see what's there. When we pulled into the town, it didn't feel like a proper town. Small doesn't cover it. There were 3 short streets, maybe 20 houses, a laundromat, a bar closed long ago, and one tiny grocery with just a red open sign buzzing in the window. The kind of place you might miss if you weren't paying attention. The car park barely had room to turn around. The trees were leaning close. Something about the way the town held itself felt quiet, snug, watching. We walked into the store because we were hungry, and because there was nowhere else. The door made a muffled click. Inside, the air was colder than outside. Not refreshing cold, but dry, stale cold, like something had been removed that should have been there. The floor was old linoleum, cracked, peeling at the edges. The lighting was dim, an overhead fluorescent flickering in a lazy rhythm. The shelves were half empty. There were cans with no labels, snack cakes wrapped in thin plastic, a few bottles of soda standing off to one side. The place looked like someone tried to recreate a grocery from a photograph. Mason grabbed a 6-pack and some barbecue chips. He turned the corner toward the soda fridge while I drifted down the opposite aisle, just looking. At the far end, I saw them, two men, one at each end of the aisle. I followed their shapes with my eyes, slowly. The first man was in a faded hoodie team logo I didn't recognize. He stood partly turned toward the other guy, but his head stayed fixed on what lay between them. His arms hung slack, but his fingers twitched. Not a normal idle. As if he was counting, or maybe waiting. The second guy was older. Long brown coat, dark cap pulled low over his face. He had that stillness like a statue. Both men were facing that yellow tape strip on the tile floor that ran exactly between them. It looked like crimacine tape minus the "Do Not Cross" text, yellow, worn, precise. They were both staring at that strip, not each other, not the shelves. I edged closer to Mason, cleared my throat, and whispered, "You see those two?" He squinted at them and said, "Are they in line?" with a dry chuckle. I smiled weakly and shook my head. It didn't feel like a joke. I felt the air change. Then the long-coated man slowly reached into his jacket. I saw the shape, short, dark, hard to tell what it was, too quick to be casual. My stomach lurched. I grabbed Mason's elbow and pulled him behind the checkout counter with me, a move so fast I surprised myself. Then the cracking started. Not a loud boom. A sharp, thin crack, bouncing off shelves and ceiling tiles. I pressed my hands over my ears. Mason crouched next to me, holding a soda bottle tight. The bottle's label crinkled under his grip. I noticed how his eyes had gone flat, no blinking, just focus. The store's lighting flickered. I tried not to breathe too loud. Shot after shot echoed. 3, 5, then a pause. Then more. The noise ricocheted, distorted by the small space. Some bottle smashed toward the back. I heard the plastic shards, the sliding metal can. And then silence. Silence that felt heavy. I peeked up. Both men were gone. No abrupt door slam, no firefight, no wounded. Just empty air and scattered groceries. The yellow tape strip still lay in the middle of the aisle as though nothing had happened. The cashier was under the counter, shaking slightly, whispering to himself. I didn't wait to find out what he was saying. I pulled Mason by the shoulder and dragged him out the door. The outside light felt wrong, flat, gray, everything bleached. We got into the car and peeled away. The engine's hum was too loud in that moment. We didn't talk. Not until we hit a diner 30 miles down the road. There, Mason asked the questions. What was that? A robbery? Some feud? I shrugged. I still don't know. Something didn't sit right. The two men, the tape line, the precision of everything. It was as if we walked into a scene that was meant to repeat, not happen by chance. 3 days later, I tried to find Claybrook again. I traced our route step by step. I slowed the speed, looked for that arrow sign. Nothing. The fence post was gone. The town, gone. Just trees lining the road and occasional trailers. I checked my GPS history. No track. I typed the name into the search bar. Nothing found. Mason rolled his eyes and said maybe we were sleep-deprived or hungry. Blamed the road trip. I kept quiet. I still had the receipt from the store, no name, no address. Just the timestamp in faint red ink, October 21st, 7:44 p.m. It sits folded in my wallet. Not as proof of anything, more like a marker, a reminder. That day, traveling roads unmarked can bring you somewhere real or somewhere not meant for you. Now, when I'm back home and the daily grind settles in, every so often I reach into my wallet and pull out that receipt. I feel the weight of it in my hand. I remember how cold the store was, how the two men didn't shop, how that yellow line glowed faint under the flicker of the light. I remember Mason's blank stare and how fast we ran. I don't think about that town to scare myself. That night, I promised myself I'd stop looking for Claybrook. I was 14 when my parents went to Costa Rica on a church mission trip and dropped me off at my uncle's place for the week. He lived just outside Laurel Creek, a tiny spot in Monroe County, West Virginia. His house sat near the bottom of a wooded ridge, so close to the tree line that his backyard never really caught the sun. Even at noon, it felt dim back there, like the woods were leaning in. My uncle worked nights, hauling coal in a beat-up rig, and lived alone except for 2 dogs that mostly kept to themselves. He wasn't the chatty type. As long as I fed the dogs, locked up after dark, and didn't mess with his stuff, he didn't care what I did. I think he actually liked the quiet. The first night passed without anything weird. Just me, the couch, a plate of spaghetti, and a stack of old VHS tapes he kept in a milk crate under the TV. I watched a basketball game from the late 90s and fell asleep halfway through. The second night is when things got strange. I was halfway through a taped college football game, something from early 2000s judging by the graphics, one of those slow defensive games, the kind that's perfect for dozing off to. I was lying on the pull-out couch with a bowl of popcorn, half asleep, when the screen blinked black. Just a quick flicker, then the channel changed. No sound, no remote in my hand. First it was static, then the picture cleared sort of. It looked like a nature show, but everything was off. Washed out colors, no logos, no title card. Just shaky shots of the forest floor and branches swaying. Then it cut to a close-up of someone's hands, wearing gray work gloves stacking smooth river stones into these little towers. Each rock placed with this weird, deliberate care. Slow, focused, I hit the remote. Nothing. Pressed power. Nothing happened. Then, just as suddenly, the screen went black again. When it came back, the football game was back on like nothing had happened. Same score, same play clock, like it had never left. Next morning over cereal, I told my uncle. He didn't even look up from his coffee. Said the signal out there was garbage in October, that the fog clings to the ridge and messes with the dish. I probably sat on the remote, he added. He wasn't rude about it, just uninterested. I didn't press it. The third night, I woke up around 2 needing to pee. The couch faced the back wall, and right across from it was the window that looked out at the slope behind the house. I sat up, rubbed my eyes, and noticed the window was cracked open. Just an inch, maybe 2. The screen was still in place, but the latch was undone. I hadn't opened it. My uncle was obsessive about the windows, especially that one. Said the bears liked to poke around back there if they caught a scent. He even had a few claw marks in the siding to prove it. I used the bathroom, shut the window, latched it tight, and tried to forget it. The fourth night, my uncle left for work around 7. I heated up a frozen burrito, fed the dogs, and went back to the couch. Around 9, the power blinked. Just a quick flicker, but when it came back, every single light in the house was on. The ceiling fan in the kitchen, the hallway light, the desk lamp in the corner I hadn't even realized was plugged in, even the bulb above the stove. I stood there for a second, just looking around, trying to listen for any noise. Nothing. Just the quiet hum of electricity. I went room to room, turning everything off. The basement light was last. That one had a pull cord. I yanked it once. Nothing. Pulled it harder. Still lit. The cord just swung slowly in a circle. I hesitated at the top of the basement stairs. At the bottom was the old freezer chest where my uncle kept venison and wild turkey. I'd never opened it. Had no reason to. But that night, the lid was open a few inches, just wide enough for the light to catch the edge of frost along the rim. There was a smell too, wet moss, mostly, but under that, something sharper, metallic, like rusted nails or old blood. I backed up, turned, and walked back upstairs. That night, the back window was open again, a few inches wider than before. I pushed the heavy oak dresser in front of it. Next day, I figured some fresh air might help. I took the trail behind the house that curved around the ridge. I'd been on it once with my uncle, but never on my own. Maybe half a mile in, I saw them. 5 stone towers, waist high, perfectly balanced. Clean river stones, stacked with almost obsessive symmetry. Each tower spaced exactly apart, like someone had measured the distance with a tape, and no water source anywhere nearby. No river, no creek, not even runoff. Just the woods, dry leaves, and silence. No boot prints, no tire tracks, not even dog prints. One of the towers had a piece of twine wrapped neatly around the middle stone. Another had a small, dried lizard lying across the top rock, positioned with care, like it had been placed there for a reason. I backed away. Didn't finish the trail. Walked straight back to the house, trying not to look at the tree line too long. That night, I barely slept. The couch smelled different, earthy, like potting soil or the air right after you open a crawl space. At 3 in the morning, the TV turned on again. Same washed out channel, no sound, just forest footage. This time, the hands stacking stones were moving slower, more careful. The background looked oddly familiar. I squinted and saw it. Behind the third tree on the left, in the distance, was the rusted deer stand I'd walked past on the trail earlier that day. I yanked the plug from the wall. The screen stayed on for another full second before going black. The sixth night, I went out to feed the dogs and came back in to find the fridge wide open. Every perishable item was gone. No eggs, no milk, no leftovers. Just gone. But all the canned food, beans, corn, soup had been pulled out and arranged on the counter in 3 small pyramids, neatly stacked, labels half peeled on each one. I stood there a long time. Then I called my uncle, straight to voicemail. I called again and again, left a message I barely remember recording. He showed up just after midnight. I was outside on the porch with the dogs. He parked, saw me, and just nodded. We walked in together. He looked at the cans, the fridge, the window. Didn't say a word. Instead, he walked to the hallway closet, pulled out his old .22, set it gently by the front door, and told me to sleep in his room. He'd take the couch. I didn't argue. Sometime before dawn, I woke up. No sound, no lights, just this shift. Like the air in the house had changed weight. The smell was back stronger now, like mold and soil and something sour. I stepped into the living room. My uncle was still asleep on the couch, rifle across his chest. The TV was off, window shut, but every cabinet door in the kitchen was wide open, and on the floor, spelled out with dried beans, rice, and spiral noodles, were 5 words: still here, still watching you. I didn't scream, didn't run. I just sat down on the edge of the couch and waited for the sun to come up. That morning I called my parents, told them I needed to come home early. They were supposed to be gone for 4 more days. I didn't care. I didn't sleep again until I was back in my own bed. I was 22 when we drove out to Brennan's uncle's property in the mountains near Clayton, Georgia. Halloween night. Later than we'd planned. The only reason I said yes to this whole thing was because Brennan wouldn't shut up about the Ridge House. Said it was local legend, and everyone who grew up there had been out to see it at least once. Supposedly abandoned since the late 60s. Everyone had some version of the story, and no one really agreed on why it had been left to rot. But it was one of those rite of passage spots, that kind of thing. Stupid dare territory. There were 4 of us, me, Brennan, his cousin Lacey, and her boyfriend Marcus. I'd met Marcus maybe twice before that night. He was one of those people who says weird stuff in a deadpan way and then stares at you to see if you'll laugh. Most of the time you don't know if he's serious or just bored. Lacey was fine. She and Brennan had spent every summer at their uncle's cabin, which was about a half-mile down the road from where we'd parked. Ridge House wasn't on any map. We got there by hiking through a dense stretch of pine trees that suddenly opened up into this quiet little clearing, and I mean quiet. No wind, no buzzing, nothing. The air felt too still. Marcus made some crack about elevation and how the bugs didn't like being that high up in the mountains. Brennan nodded like that explained everything. I didn't say anything. I already felt off, like my body knew something my brain hadn't caught up to yet. The house looked worse than I expected. One corner had fully collapsed, and the porch sagged like it was just barely hanging on. But the door was still there, still open, almost like it was waiting for us. I remember how the leaves didn't crunch under our feet when we stepped onto the porch. They should have. They just kind of shifted. Inside, it was just as dead. No smell, which was weird, You expect a place like that to stink old wood, rot, maybe dead animals. But the air was dry and weirdly cold, like a basement that hadn't been opened in years. There was no furniture left. No glass in the windows, just scraps of wallpaper peeling down the walls in long strips. You could tell where things used to be, where a dresser had left a shadow on the wall, or where a light fixture had fallen and left a rust stain. Lacey pointed out a coat hook near the base of the stairs. It was still bolted into the wall, shaped like some kind of animal. Not quite a deer, not quite a wolf. Something in between. She said her uncle told her a family had lived here until their daughter went missing. No one ever said what happened to her, just that the family packed up overnight and never came back, left everything behind. That's when we split up. Brennan wanted to check the kitchen in the back. Lacey and Marcus stayed by the stairs, still whispering. I drifted down a narrow hallway off to the left that looked like it led to a back office or maybe a storage room. The floor creaked a little, but not as much as you'd expect for a house that old. I stepped inside, and my phone immediately started glitching. Full signal, but nothing worked. Messages froze. Camera wouldn't open. I tried rebooting it and got stuck on the loading screen. There was this faint rectangle on the wall, like where a painting had once hung. The more I looked at it, the more my chest tightened. It wasn't panic. It felt like gravity was leaning forward, like something was pulling me toward that empty space. I blinked, and for half a second, I saw her. She was just there. Not a blur, not a shadow, just a woman, standing with her back to me. Brown dress, short black hair, and then she was gone. When I turned around, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A small, square door set into the floor, maybe 3 feet across. The wood looked dry, like it would crack if you stepped on it, but it held. There was a faded chalk mark drawn over it, some kind of circle with lines running through it. Not random, intentional. I called out to Brennan, but my voice felt swallowed. No answer. That dense, pressurized feeling came back. My ears popped like we were climbing altitude fast, and it made my stomach roll. I leaned forward, just 1 foot on the trap door, and something in me snapped to attention. Like my whole body was saying, nope, not down there. Then I heard Brennan's voice, from the opposite side of the house. It sounded distant, muffled, like he was yelling through a wall. I backed out of the room fast. As soon as I stepped back into the hallway, the pressure lifted. I could breathe again. I found Brennan standing at the foot of the stairs, staring upward. Lacey and Marcus were gone. I walked right up next to him, said his name twice before he finally turned his head. His eyes looked flat, like he wasn't all there. They went up, he said, barely above a whisper, but they're not up there. I didn't ask what he meant. We just started up the stairs. The whole upstairs was one long hallway with 3 open doors on the right side. First door, nothing but dust. Second door, strips of wallpaper fluttering like something had just moved. The third door is where everything shifted. There were footprints, dozens of them, all small, bare feet. They started at the far wall, led to the window, then doubled back. Over and over. No prints leading out. That's when I heard Lacey's voice. She wasn't screaming, just talking. Calm, quiet, like she was telling someone a story. I looked around, but it wasn't coming from any of the rooms. It was below us, under the floor. I could feel the warmth through my shoes. Brennan said, "They're in the crawl space." I didn't wait. I was already moving. Back in the office, the chalk symbol was smudged now. I don't remember touching it. I don't remember deciding anything. I just opened the door and went down. The space beneath wasn't a crawl space. It was a chamber, 10 feet wide, maybe 8 feet tall, with old brick walls and a dirt floor. A single light bulb hung from a wire, still glowing. The rest of the house had no power. Lacey was standing in the far corner, facing the wall. Marcus was next to her, eyes closed, perfectly still. I stepped forward, but the ground felt off, like it was sloped, even though it looked flat. My legs felt heavy, like I was dragging them through mud. Neither of them moved until I touched Marcus's arm. He dropped instantly, just collapsed like he'd been switched off. Lacey turned and stared at me, eyes wide. "You're not supposed to be down here," she whispered. I grabbed her arm, tried to pull her toward the ladder, but she didn't budge. She kept glancing past me like someone was standing behind me. I didn't turn around. Then Brennan dropped in behind us. He didn't say a word, just walked straight past, knelt by the far wall, and started digging with his bare hands. His fingers shredded open, bleeding into the dirt. He didn't stop, not even when I yelled his name. Lacey screamed. That broke it. She tore away and scrambled up the ladder. I didn't hesitate. I threw Marcus over my shoulder and followed. Brennan never moved. We ran until we hit the gravel road. No one looked back. Lacey bent over and threw up. Marcus came to slowly, muttering something about the woman under the house. Brennan never came out. We called the sheriff's department from a gas station near the main highway, told them where we'd been, left out a lot. They went out there with a search team, said the crawl space had collapsed, no chamber, no ladder, no sign of Brennan. They called it a sinkhole, said it wasn't safe to dig. His parents held a service 2 weeks later, open casket, even though there was nothing to bury. They let us speak. None of us talked about what actually happened. Lacey moved to Oregon this year. Marcus changed his number. I stopped going out on Halloween.